Peace, family. Y'all know who it is. It's Dr. Bakari K. Lumumba of LumumbaSpeaks.com. Back once again. Great show we got playing this afternoon. Please, I apologize. Let me start off correctly. Happy Pan African Monday, everybody. It's July 20th, 2026. Happy Pan African Monday. Once again, great show we got lined up. Of course, I am the progenitor of LumumbaSpeaks.com, a Black Empowerment Initiative, where we believe we to gain a competitive advantage by always betting on Black, in conjunction, of course, with Bequaline Network, the Pan-African Social Media Extraordinaire, and the home of African-centered news and information. If you have not already, make sure you hit the subscribe and like button, thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. Hit that notification bell, and make sure you donate so we can continue to provide you with African-centered news and information here on YouTube. Title of the show is going to be What Happened to FBA Advocacy for Reparations. So definitely looking forward to having a rather impassioned conversation, but it's going to be respectful. Before we get started, family, I would be remiss in my duty if I did not discuss today's Black History fact. Many of you may be aware of the man, the myth, not a myth, but the legend. We're talking about Vance Omar Fanon, born 20 July 1925 in Fort-de-France, Martinique. Of course, he was a West Indian psychiatrist and political philosopher, and his works have become influential in the fields of post-colonial studies and critical theory, as well as being an intellectual. Fanon was a political radical and Pan-Africanist concerned with the psychopathology of colonization and the human, social, and cultural consequences of decolonization. In the course of his work as a physician and psychiatrist, of course, Fanon supported the Algerian War of Independence from France and was a member of the Algerian National Liberation Front, known as the ANLF. Fanon has been described as the most influential anti-colonial thinker of his time. For more than 5 decades, the life and works of Fanon have inspired national liberation movements and other freedom and political movements in Sri Lanka, South Africa, and the United States. His literature, his books, which of course I've read, Black Skin, White Mask, written in 1952, A Dying Colonialism in 1959, The Wretched of the Earth in 1961, and Toward the African Revolution in 1964. Some of his books, of course, my favorite, of course, is The Wretched of the Earth. But just want to make sure that we give our great ancestor, Vance Fanon, his flowers. Once again, today is his birthday. Moving forward, family, also want to make sure I give a shout out to Mr. K and, of course, Nepater. I want to make sure I get his name right, put some respect on his name. Nefakari T. Dessalines. So they are really the motivation for today's video. Nefakari T. Dessalines did a reaction video to O'Shea Duke Jackson and Dave Anderson. Mr. K sent me, of course, that video. And so I said, okay, I checked it out before I went to bed. I said, I want to do a show about this. So definitely want to give a shout out to Nefakari T. Dessalines because he continues to pump out Pan-African content. I think he does a great job of addressing the misinformation. I know Brother Rakeem Shabazz of Why is the Dome TV. If you haven't, of course, subscribed to his channel, make sure you do. But he talked about as well that it's really sad to see that Black people are becoming the major progenitors or disseminators of misinformation, right? And particularly in terms of our history. We know before there were enemies of non-community-based enemies of African people who did that, but now we're finding even our own people engaging in said behavior, and of course that is extremely disconcerting. Number 2, family, as you all know, the link is in the description. The link will be in the chat momentarily. Definitely look forward to having a conversation with you all. But want to make sure I go over the ground rules as well before we get started, so there's no confusion about behavior, what's acceptable, what's unacceptable. So here, of course, at Lumumba Speaks and of course Bequaline Network, we accept diversity of thought. Diversity of thought is welcome. However, it doesn't matter if you're on the left, you're in the middle, or you're right, or you're on the right. You could come here and be part of the conversation. No racial epithets of any kind. This is a space of Black empowerment. No epithets of any kind. Anti-Black bigotry is not allowed. This is a space of Black empowerment. We believe in the 3 N's of Black power: self-respect, self-defense, and of course, self-determination. Number 3, facts over feelings. If we have an intellectual conversation, which we will, we want you to attack the argument and not the person. Attack the argument and not the person, like Umar Johnson would say 3 times, attack the argument and not the person. No ad hominems, no personal attacks, no red herrings. You attack the argument and not the person. And then, of course, no fundamentally false statements. You can have an opinion, but if you make a claim that is adverse to facts, I will tap in, of course, correct you. There's a reason for that. Make a course correction. This is my platform. I am a serious scholar, and if I allow individuals to disseminate information that is ahistorical on my platform, it hurts my credibility as Dr. Bakari K. Lumumba. We can't have that here. And of course, last but not least, our mission here at Lumumba Speaks and Bitcoin Network is neither to exonerate or vilify, but to challenge conventional wisdom and re-examine what has previously been accepted as fact. So, family, I'm going to put the link in the chat. And of course, as you all know, the link is in the description. If you're watching, make sure you like, subscribe, share, donate. If you're watching, of course, LumumbaSpeaks.com in conjunction with Bitcoin Network, the Pan-African social media extraordinaire, and the home of African-centered news and information. So there was an article that came up that I actually read that really touched on this issue, right? And that many of you may be aware that initially, FBA, there was this push to delineate. There was an advocacy for reparations, right? Which I think most people would argue is needed and necessary, right? I, of course, have been an advocate for reparations for over 20 years. In fact, it even cost me a promotion once when I was in the Ohio Army National Guard. Literally, not figuratively. It actually cost me a promotion when I was in the Ohio Army National Guard. I was seeking to become a staff sergeant. I was actually at Warrior Leadership Training, WLC Warrior Leadership course, and my advocacy was an issue. And so they found a way to prevent me from finishing the course successfully and, of course, putting on staff sergeant. So I am knee deep in the game, as they like to say, when it comes to the issue of reparations. So with that being said, family, let me see if I can find this another way, this article. I thought I sent it to myself. Let's see here. Give me 1 second. Okay, yeah, here we go. And so this is an article from the fashionghana.com. And so it talks about a crazy FBA cultist obsessed with Africans, claims Africans don't grow afros, and here's why. So in the article, they start off by saying in the early 2020s, a former pimp by the name of Tariq started a movement titled FBA. And so I don't believe Tariq Nasheed was actually a pimp. We know that would be considered sex trafficking, but he did, of course, identify himself as such on a talk show. He said he was the first pimp to write a book about pimping. Started a movement titled FBA, a movement for Black Americans who believed they were the foundation of and built the American nation due to the slavery that existed in the country, all while dodging accountability for the wars, regime changes, and economic exploitation of other nations by America, upon which the nation was actually built. So two things can be true at the same time there. Nevertheless, the rumor at the time was emotional, and essentially paraphrasing, you Africans don't like us, so scientifically, we are no longer Africans. Then those with a little more intellect projected the argument, we are about to receive reparations for slavery, so we need to identify ourselves. So we need to identify ourselves under a different banner, so Jamaicans, Nigerians, Malawians, Senegalese, Ghanaians, and others don't come in and claim it. The bottom line is that delineation became their hallmark, which is not a bad concept when used to specify who they are. However, wrapped up in emotion, many of them misunderstood delineation, which generally means to specifically identify something within a wider collection, and instead treated it as separation, which is technically what the real purpose of the FBA rhetoric was aimed to achieve. The pseudo-reparations movement attracted many under the banner of working. Mr. K, what's the word? Movement attracted many under the banner of working towards the reparations claims, but instead it launched with the consistent trolling of other African Americans who don't subscribe to them, and African people and other Black non-FBAs to gain attention for the delineation, something the majority of people really didn't care about. Oh my goodness. Really didn't care about. In the midst of this, the same trolls would continue to playing the victim and gaslighting Africans by accusing them of being unhappy about the delineation. Fast forward 6 years, and FBAs are still consistently hosting Twitter Spaces, TikTok Lives, and making social media posts about Africans because at this point, it is one of the few ways they receive recognition through reactions, such as this very article. The delineation for reparations campaign has fallen flat on its face. To date, the movement has become little more than an online joke centered around trolling Africans for focusing on every disaster on the continent, every mishap involving prominent African figures. One could argue they become even more concerned with and focus on Africa since beginning this so-called delineation, which I think is a good point. Right. So then it's this nonsensical claim that, of course, Africans don't grow afros. So I would agree there. Right. When it first came out, there was an advocacy for reparations. That's something, of course, I would be in support of. I've been in support of for over 20 years. I have even advocated that there's a number of ways reparations should be implemented. One, we should focus on, of course, a cash payment because we were denied, of course, capital. Uh, our ancestors were denied capital. And second, I would advocate, and of course, I want to hear what you all think about this, that African Americans don't aren't required to pay taxes, local, state, or federal. This is an argument I would make. FBA don't care about reparations. It's a smokescreen to trick to lure you into their hate cult. Proper perspective. So you could tap in, of course, and of course let me know. We can actually expound on your thought process there. And don't forget the revisionist history of Africans and Caribbeans by the ADOS and FBA's in the name of gatekeeping. Yes, we can talk about that too. Mr. K, I finally need you to tap in and be part of the combo. You know you don't have the cam up, but you know you're one of the historians here at Lumumba Speaks, along with, of course, Brother Dwayne. And so I definitely need you to tap in and lean into that a little bit more. So I would argue, yes, a lot of people would agree with that, right? But one of the issues that I began to have, of course, with the movement was early on. There was a conversation regarding, well, we have to delineate because these individuals are going to try to steal the benefits. But they never gave any examples of that actually taking place. I provided examples. I think I did a show back in November, last November, where Crimson Cure and I think the brother who's an attorney down in Texas stated, well, non-FBA Black people, non-African Americans were trying to steal resources allocated for, of course, African Americans, but they never said what those resources were. And so we tend to find that oftentimes when they're making these type of specious accusations, they are making nebulous claims, right? Claims that oftentimes aren't able to be substantiated. So I think also, and I think many would agree, this is an example of misplaced aggression, right? We lack the capacity or ability to actually challenge and hold accountable the entity that is responsible for our global political and economic quagmire. So we, of course, misplaced aggression. Oftentimes, the example is used, the husband or wife goes to work, they're torn a new one by the supervisor, so they come home and take it out on the family, right, the spouse and children. This would be an example of that. I think also we have to be honest, some of this is rooted in, of course, Afrophobia, self-hatred, and, of course, identity dysphoria, right? And now I would argue that, unfortunately, many of our people, and we find this globally, tend to have a liminal identity, sense of self. And we, of course, identify that as a result of miseducation. Of course, we know Sister Farida from Togo argues that it's due to neo-colonial education or colonial education. Of course, we know that Dr. Charles Mills, this brilliant text, canonical text in the field of Black studies, his book, The Racial Contract, he talks about the role of this miseducation plays, and of course, allowing Black and for voting, and having Black people unfortunately have a unhealthy sense of self. I think that all plays a role as well. And then the other issue that I think is rather curious, and this is a great issue, I've seen a number of individuals and commenters talk about this, is as much as delineation is being pushed, it seems every time you turn around, all they're talking about is Africa, right? So that's something that is rather curious as well. We could talk about the, of course, revisionist history, right? Particularly when it comes to ideas of Pan-Africanism. I know I did a reaction video to Osei Duke Jackson when he was making some claims about Pan-Africanism, and of course, with the verse to facts, he claims that only African Americans are the ones who have practiced Pan-Africanism. Completely false. Neferkari T. Dessalines, and give a shout out to Mr. K because he provided the video to me via email, talked about, well, if that was true, why did Senegal bring in Haitian students after the, of course, earthquake in 2010, right? If that was true, then why did Haitian administrators go to the Congo to assist in the building of the nation after the Congolese independence, right? If that was true, then why did Muammar Gaddafi provide a $5 million interest-free loan to Louis Farrakhan, the Nation of Islam, if Pan-Africanism is one-sided and only being practiced by African Americans who are providing, of course, largesse for, of course, non-American African people? So the claims are simply false, right? But this is what happens when individuals, one is a grift, right? Neferkari Dessalines, he argued that it started talking about, of course, reparations, white supremacy. Then they was dogging out black women, and now the push is to, of course, attack, of course, black people who aren't from the United States of America. So something to really look at. But the advocacy for reparations, which I think is very important, has gone by the wayside. So let's see here. Mr. K states, when FBAs talk about Africans stealing our resources, it's like the co-op, the notorious stories of America stealing Africa's resources and flipping the script. Good point there. Once again, family, the links in the description, links in the chat. Tap in if you want to be part of the conversation. But this is something that I truly find curious, right? When you go to the FBA website, of course, created by Tariq Nasheed, he states very, very clearly, this is not a political advocacy organization. There is no, and let me just bring it up. I just bring it up. FBA website. Yeah, so I'll just bring it up. And I've shown this before on my platform, so this wouldn't be the first time. But as you can see here, welcome to the Foundation of Black American Cultural site, right? Make some brief narrative here. It's important to clarify that this is not a group, organizational movement with a designated leader. FBA is a lineage-based designation referring to Black Americans who descend from the freedmen, the formerly enslaved people emancipated in the United States, as well as the free Black Americans who were present during the foundational building formation of this nation. This lineage represents a unique and unbroken connection to the Black Americans who helped build, shape, and define the United States from its earliest foundations. We honor and celebrate the rich history, cultural contributions, and unyielding strength of foundation of Black Americans. This recognition is not only a tribute to our ancestors, but also a commitment to proceed in advancing the legacy that they established. And of course, as you go on, there are a number of course, products to sell that he is, of course, selling. So something to consider there, right? That this is not, he states himself, this is not a advocacy organization, but a what? Really just is a way for him to make money. So something to, of course, consider when we talk about what is the actual goal here, right? And I think one of the things that I find extremely curious is that there's less of a focus on, of course, policy-based solutions to the, of course, vicissitudes of life for the of course, the majority of African Americans here in the United States of America. But there's a focus on simply attacking Black people from other countries. So I think it's not only nonsensical, but I think it speaks to a level of social and political cowardice, right? And I've used this analogy on a number of occasions to where, to me, it's synonymous to you're on the playground, you don't want to combat or fight the bully, right? You don't want to take on Debo, right? So guess what? You're going to fight Smokey and try to, fight Smokey, someone that you think you can be to save face, right? This is something that I think is very common, but rather unfortunate, and leads to a lot of infighting. I think it's very easy to divide African people, unfortunately. And then, of course, we see, as I said before, a lot of this, I think, is rooted in having a liminal, of course, identity. And when I say that, or even the concept of identity dysphoria, I recall vividly watching an episode of Dr. Phil with my parents, where they were having a conversation about gender identity. And there was an individual who was born male, who identified as female, and the gentleman who, of course, was pushing back against the concepts and ideas, queer theories, pushing back against queer theory, asked them, "What makes you a woman?" And the person said, "Well, because people see me and accept me as a woman." And so we see that the individual's sense of self was externally based. And so that makes me think of Cameron, who we know is nowhere near a public intellectual, stating, "Well, I identify as a Black American because they don't really rock with us in Africa," right? So extremely simplistic thinking, but definitely want to hear from you all. Tap in, be part of the conversation. You're watching LumumbaSpeaks.com in conjunction with Equaline Network, and we're having a conversation titled, "What Happened to FBA Advocacy for Reparations?" So the link is in the description. The link is in the chat. Make sure you hit the like and subscribe button. Thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. Make sure you hit the notification bell as well. Make sure you donate. What happened to the FBA Advocacy for Reparations? There was a push for delineation. However, what we tend to find now is every time you turn around, they're discussing, talking about issues addressing Africa and, of course, the Caribbean. A great example was when I did a reaction video to O'Shea Duke Jackson. As you all know, me, I actually reached out to him, emailed him, he responded back, but he didn't want to actually have a conversation. Um, he talked about, well, Pan Africanism being one side, and he plays a video of Louis Farrakhan defending Nigeria. So this is an example of a Black American defending, of course, the African nation, and this is the issue with Pan Africanism is one sided. I said, well, there's an issue there. I said, Louis Farrakhan isn't an African American, he isn't a Black American. Louis Farrakhan is West Indian. His mother, I think, is from St. Lucia. His father was Jamaican. What are we talking about here? Right? So you see, just the misinformation it's rampant. Dr. Lumumba, if you and the Pan Africans academic scholar Darius Spearman teamed and became academic partners in crime, you both will be the Pan African Run DMC on these YouTube streets. Okay, I'm definitely going to check him out. Definitely going to check him out, and hopefully we can find a way to work together. But this is something that is very common. So this is why some people even argument. Maybe some of these individuals are agents, or they want to be agents. Because the level of misinformation is rampant, right? But then at other issues, individuals are typically able to hide behind, of course, social media. I've reached out to a number of individuals, as you all know, and the only person who actually accepted my invitation to actually have a conversation was Afro Elite. I do remember at the time he was pushing FBA, and he had an issue with ADOS. I think he was, of course, an acolyte of Tariq Nasheed. Last I saw, he was talking about anti-Black racism, not so much a focus on FBA. So I don't know if there was a change in his, of course, talking points or political views. But even that conversation left a lot to be desired, because he was just willfully making claims that were adverse to facts and had no care or concern the fact that he was disseminating misinformation or false information on the platform. So that was something that really opened my eyes to what people tend to do, not only on YouTube, but in social media, right? So maybe the person's trolling, maybe the person's trying to get a reaction or rise out of you. He was successful in doing that about 4 years ago when we had that conversation. But this is something that I think is extremely concerning. Do you ever try to reach out to Dave Anderson for an online conversation? I think I have, but I would try again. Right? And matter of fact, Dave Anderson, I remember the video that Dessalines showed. He talked about, well, you all don't have a diaspora on your own island, so why would you try to have one throughout the world? And you are the same people and are the same people. And Dessalines went in and gave a great example of why that wasn't the case. Now, of course, most Dominicans identify as European descent rather than of African descent, so that there is not of course, a concept of them being one person or one people. So, of course, once again, making claims that are adverse to facts is something that we tend to find is very common, of course, when we're having conversations about Pan-Africanism, history, culture, education, etc. So that's why it's important that, those who are in the know, those of us who are educated, well-read, well-spoken, are able to be in those spaces and counteract the misinformation. Now, of course, individuals won't get mad at you. They're going to engage in ad hominems. We have to keep our composure. But I think it's very important, because I make the argument, and I talked about this on a number of times on my platform, almost ad nauseum, that anyone who misrepresents our history as a people to promote their political agenda is an enemy of African people. And it doesn't matter if the person's African or Black themselves, right? And so that's an argument that I make. We tend to find that this is very common, particularly even in the academy, right? But even, of course, in popular culture, and it's just everyday life where individuals are making claims that are adverse to facts. We find this with a number of fringe groups in the Black community. And so we have to do the work to, of course, address that, while also doing the work to improve the material conditions of our people. We need your voice in these YouTube streets to inform younger Black Americans. Yes, get David Anderson here. He says he is a professor without a PhD. How does that work? So yeah, that's a great question. But you can be a professor without a PhD. It depends on what institution you're at. Typically, if you're at a community college, you could be a professor without a PhD. If you're at a community college. Now, if you go to maybe a liberal arts college, 4-year university, you're going to need a PhD, typically, right? You're going to need a terminal degree. But if you are at a community college, oftentimes you only need a master's, or you need to be working towards your master's to, of course, teach at a community college. But I definitely am going to reach out to him and see if we can have a conversation with Professor Dave Anderson regarding his issues, of course, with Pan-Africanism. I think it'll be a great conversation. I'm vaguely aware of him. I've seen some clips on him, of course, on social media. I hope we can have a great conversation. Many of you who are, of course, been watching my channel for quite some time may be aware of. I had a conversation with, golly, what is his name? He has searched for Uhuru, the brother from Sacramento. He lives in Atlanta now. Good night. And he's a Georgia fan. I can't recall his name. Let me see if I can try to bring this up. Search for who? Dinah Samir. And he was making he made a number of claims that were, thank you, Mr. K, adverse to facts about Pan-Africanism. And so I had to address that. One of the arguments that he made was that Marcus Garvey, right and honorable Marcus Garvey, was unable to get, and I'm quoting him directly, was unable to get it popping with Pan-Africanism until he came to, of course, the United States, linked up with FBAs. End quote. So I disabused him of that fact. I provided a copious amount of information that was able to highlight that was not true, and that Marcus Garvey was only mentored by Robert Love, Dr. Robert Love, who was, of course, from the Bahamas. And then he was even mentored by, golly, what's the brother from, he was a Sudanese Egyptian journalist. Let's see here, Marcus Garvey, Deuce Muhammad Ali. Right. So I say this is long before he ever came to the United States of America. So there's just a lot of misinformation that's being promoted. And then oftentimes, and Brother Jay Webb stated this to me years ago. Shout out to Brother Jay Webb. He's a rapper here in the Gem City. He said, typically in these spaces, what happens is the person who's loudest is the person who's believed. But just because you talk louder than everyone else doesn't make you right. And so I think it's very important. And I would even tell my students this, that, you want to be careful where you get your information from, right? You want to make sure that, there's a credible source. And what we tend to find, unfortunately, is when it comes to these conversations about Black history, African history, Pan-Africanism, there's a lot of misinformation being promoted. I can recall vividly, and this is not, conjecture or hyperbole, Tariq Nasheed stating on his platform, because I think he goes live on Twitter a lot, stating that Pan-Africanism was created by the CIA. He literally said this, and anyone who has a working knowledge of Pan-Africanism knows that when Pan-Africanism was coined, the term Pan-Africanism was coined, right? We was actually engaging in the behavior and activity long before the term was coined by, of course, Henry Sylvester Williams. The CIA hadn't even been invented, right? So this is an issue. Or created. CIA hadn't been created. So I'm going to reach out to Dave Anderson, and my hope and desire is that we're going to be able to facilitate a conversation. I think a lot of people would like to hear what we have to say. But once again, what happened to the advocacy for reparations? That's the real question. What happened to the advocacy for reparations? I've come in contact with individuals who are FBA, some who are ADOS. And all they would do was, and this is just my experience, this is anecdotal, was just promote anti-Black bigotry. And it blew my mind. They would just promote anti-Black bigotry over and over and over again. So there were times where individuals would come on a platform, we give people space because we believe in diversity of thought. Then what would happen? I would have to, of course, excommunicate them, have them leave, bid them a good night, because of their behavior. It's just, it's bigoted in nature. So I think what the brother said earlier, I think some of it gives people a space to, of course, engage in, of course, a hate cult, right, at the proper perspective. But tap in, family. We'd love to hear from you all. Get your perspective on this issue. The link is in the description. The link is in the chat. You're watching, of course, LumumbaSpeaks.com, a Black empowerment initiative where we believe, once again, that we can gain a competitive advantage by always betting on Black, in conjunction, of course, with Bequaline Network, the Pan-African social media extraordinaire, in the home of African-centered news and information. Pull up, be part of the convo. We'd love to hear from you all regarding this issue. Number one, put a 1 in the chat if you are in support of reparations for African Americans. Put a 2 in the chat if you are against reparations for African Americans. So very quickly, family, put a 1 in the chat if you are in support of reparations for African Americans. Put a 2 in the chat if you are opposed to reparations for African Americans. So we could just do a quick straw poll on the live when it gets some feedback there. And then, of course, the most important thing is uh, we talk about policy-based conversations. Like remember having a conversation offline. Sister Carrie, how you doing? We still got to schedule a show, sister. Please send me an email so we can schedule a show about your book. Um, so having a conversation offline with Brother Dwayne Omawale, and he was telling me, he says, well, one of the issues my concern, he talked about in regard to the push for reparations by the FBA, particularly Twigg and She being the lead at the time, was that they have no background in terms of policy-based conversations, influencing policy at the national level, federal level. And so he's like, so he stated, so I would question how far this would actually go because there aren't any individuals in place to actually implement said agenda or plan or goal. And he made an argument probably 2 years ago. We also know that in 2023, she spoke at and give me 1 second snapshot, spoke at a reparations-based event in Oakland, and it led to an actual fight, right? Um, and so I would argue that this is in part representative of the type of individuals that he attracts, individuals who are lowbrow, um, low intellect, right, emotionally based, right. And of course, there was a professor who said, well, when you have these conversations, it's going to be emotional because of what we've gone through. And you could probably make an argument, but extremely disconcerting that, of course, that took place. And then after that took place, I think it was maybe in the fall of 2023, we stopped hearing about an advocacy for reparations and it focused on an attack on, of course, African and Caribbean immigrants. So very quickly, let me read these comments. And then, of course, we get to use Brother Snapshot. The British M15 was the first Western intelligence agency to go to war against Pan-Africanism before U.S. intelligence agencies did. Yes, we know CIA wasn't created until 1947. Deuce was getting harassed by M15 before he went to the U.S. in 1919. Let's see here. Very good. Okay. So everyone's saying yes, they are in supporting reparations for African Americans. Very good. Snapshot SSR from the good old UK, jolly old London. What's the word, brother?
Hello, how you doing?
I'm doing quite all right.
No, this is a great topic. First of all, I want to start by saying I am in support of reparations. And in an American context, I think that reparations should be for the people who have had their ancestors enslaved in America. So if you don't have a claim to that, I don't think you should be trying to make a claim for that. And I don't think anyone who doesn't have a claim for that is making a claim for that, which is one of the things that I've noticed. A lot of the people that use the term ADOS or FBA try to project out there that a lot of people from other areas want to take their reparations from them, and I don't think that that's true. But one of the things that I think about is the approach for reparations. I think in America has been gone about in the wrong way. I think, for example, a few years ago, there was a lot of talk about California giving out reparations for slavery and things like that. And I did a bit of research, and California, from what the research that I found, California was never really officially a slave state.
No, it wasn't.
So I'm thinking to myself, well, you've got all these people that are rallying behind this, but there isn't anyone, want to say, for a lack of a better term, credible to turn around and say, well, hold on a minute, the chances of us actually getting it from this place is not really workable because this place was never considered a slave state. We should be going for, the Virginias, the Mississippis, do you know what I mean? The places where it was more abundant, right? So from that point, that was a bit of a light bulb moment to me, because I'm like, these people that are shouting the loudest online, are they really serious about this? Because why does it take me from being outside of the country to come to that conclusion? I think in America, in the American context, to get reparations, I think the best strategy for that would be to start with the most recent atrocities that have happened to the community and then work backwards towards slavery. There are one of the biggest arguments non-black people say when this conversation for reparations comes up is you yourself personally was never a slave.
Correct.
So why should you get something, right? So
Yeah.
so when I say start with recent atrocities and then work backwards, it is known that the American government had a hand in importing drugs into neighborhoods that were predominantly black. You could easily run a census or a study on how that impacted black households and the income and the wealth and all of that had been extracted from that. And that is things that affect people today that you could have a clearer run for a claim for. And once you get that claim, the momentum starts to run and you can start running it back. Right. It was the crack era in the 80s or whatever it was in the States. Then it goes back to civil rights and stuff that happened then. Then it goes back to things like Rosewood and Black Wall Street and things like that, and all the wealth that was lost there. And then you work backwards. Another strategy should be tracing which families actually owned your family. Where are those families now? And suing them directly. Don't worry about it.
Very quickly, if I'm going to interject. I like where you're headed. I like where you're at. I just think you're in the zip code. I was on argue we're in the area code. I want to break it down to the zip code. Michelle Alexander, in her seminal text, what's the title of it? The New Jim Crow.
Okay.
She talks about that African Americans have been under a system of social control since it began with slavery, shifted and morphed into sharecropping, black codes, and then of course Jim Crow. I think she unknowingly made an argument for reparations by arguing that we've been on a system of social control that of course was illegal, right? And we were confined to second-class citizenship. That is one example. The second issue is I don't think you should go after individual families for reparations. I believe, and this is something Dr. Malana Karinga made an argument for as well, that reparations must come from the state because it was the state, it was the government, it was the nation who legalized, codified, and subsidized the enslavement of African people. So when I say subsidize, there were laws put in place in which people paid taxes to have a standing militia to quell prospective slave revolts. This started, of course, in 1719 with the Stonewall Rebellion in Stonewall, South Carolina. Afterwards, we saw a proliferation of colonial governments, right? Because there were different colonies, creating where the legislature would say we're going to take this amount of taxes to have a standing militia to quell slave revolts, right? So we're talking about subsidizing the enslavement of African people, legalizing it, right? It was legal. And then, of course, codifying where there was a number of laws that were put in place, what we call black codes, to inhibit, of course, black people's rights as human beings. So I would argue, and maybe this is just an intellectual discourse that we're having, right? Disagreement is something personal.
Sure.
You're a Himothy and I'm a Himothy, right? Right? My argument is that we have to go after the state because, matter of fact, when I would teach African American history, this is something I would tell my students. I said, no, you got to go after the government because the government is the one who made it legal. The government is the one who codified slavery. The government is the one who subsidized it.
Okay, those are all valid points, I think. But I think, I still think as a starting point, at least, going after the individuals and the families that owned it, it negates the conversation or the counter argument of random Joe Public today saying, why should I be paying for it out of my tax money? I don't want my tax dollars going to it. That's fine. Your tax dollars wouldn't be going to it because we're going after these private families or these private businesses as it was back then to get that money. And once you get that victory, it will be easier to then go after the government, because I think you start small and then you build up to it. Do you see what I mean? It would just be like a different strategy, really. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you. You're breaking up a little bit, but I just think that would be difficult, right? I think the best argument is to go after, the government. And so, of course, people would take issue and umbrage with, well, why do I have to pay for that? My tax dollars. But our tax dollars pay for a number of things that the government was responsible for. If someone's deleted by a police officer, and we find that, of course, it was unjust or illegal, our tax dollars pay for that, right? Well, our tax dollars unwillingly, pay for subsidizing the nation state of Israel. Right?
Sure, but going after the government requires numbers to be in your favor. And my understanding is that the black population in the United States of America is only 13-14%. So you can't swing that pendulum by yourself. And I highly doubt the other ethnic groups in America are gonna go.
Well, yeah, and I think that's where we have to take a page from the brilliance of course, Malcolm X, where we have to make this argument outside of the American legal system.
But then, how would you get it from the government if you're doing that outside the American legal system?
Right. Well, the only recourse we would have is to go to the UN, or of course is it the Hague in the Netherlands?
The Hague.
Hague. Thank you. The Hague in the Netherlands.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to work because there isn't. I don't think that there's an international mechanism that exists today that can hold America accountable for the stuff that America does.
Yeah,
so we see that with the negotiations with the Iran conflict and other things. They don't hold their word, and there isn't really anyone with the muscle to hold them to it. That's why I go back to my argument about going after the fact we can trace our using genealogy. You can trace back your family and find out where your surnames come from, where they were likely.
But here's the issue. The argument your family will make is that it was legal. You can't sue us for us doing something at the time was legal. So, and I make the argument that much of the advocacy for reparations would not necessarily be for slavery, but it would be for what? Sharecropping and Jim Crow. We're talking about an illegal system of social control. That was a contravention of the law. That's the argument I would make, just like not Native Americans, Japanese Americans put in internment camps, right? I would make that's the argument I would make. And this is something, like I said, that Michelle Alexander, I think, unknowingly makes this argument in her book, The New Jim Crow, right? The rise of what mass incarceration in the age of colorblindness that is due to the system of social control that African Americans lived under since, of course, 1865.
Okay, then. So it's not going to be. So it shouldn't be about reparations for slavery. It should be about the period after slavery, when the community was hindered from being able to make a living, exist just as a fellow. Yeah, just exist as a fellow human being and just be able to get on and prosper. Is that what you think that?
We would deny our rights as citizens.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, I could see that argument. Yeah. I think that would be a stronger. You could debate that on so many different levels and go for it. The sad thing is that a lot of these online groups that have popped up have kind of like diverged into like just xenophobic attacks on other people rather than going.
Real quick, brother, I use the term Afrophobic attacks.
Yeah, that would work. Rather than keeping their eye on the prize and going for what they say that they want, it's just easier to punch down on people than it is to punch up, isn't it? So,
absolutely. So very quickly, let me read this comment here. Brother says it is useful to have African Americans with a separate identifier from Africans or Caribbeans. Is it? So he's asking a question. I think it may not solve anything, but maybe it would reduce the internet noise. So I'm an African American, right? I don't know. I can't say that I think the real issue is just, as Sister Carrie states, anti-blackness and Afrophobia, right? It's just self-hatred. So it doesn't matter what they call themselves. Then you can have a separate identity. But once again, denied the rights of citizens as human beings, absolutely. What we find is what? They delineated, and they still won't leave African and the West Indians alone, even though they said
Yeah.
they delineated.
Yeah.
Right. So the real issue is what? They view black people as the enemy. That's just the reality of the situation. And it's a form of Americanized tribalism. Yeah, extremely unfortunate. And that's why I would say, part of Pan Africanism is about irrespective of where you are in the world, working with black people who want to improve our conditions and lot in life.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if I was in the UK, guess who I would be hitting up? Brother Snapshot and Mr. K.
Yeah, man. Come through, man. When are you coming?
So these are issues that, of course, we have to face, unfortunately, as a people. But I think the best thing to do is something that we do traditionally in our culture. That's when individuals are engaging in behavior that is antithetical to our benefit or a contravention of our values. What do? We excommunicate them. Yeah.
But see, the thing is, with the excommunication, it's like these people can still be rewarded for doing and saying whatever they're saying by other bits.
Officer Tatum just stated on a show with Piers Morgan that we were better off in slavery.
Oh, no.
Matter of fact, Charlie Kirk stated that black people were better off in slavery, and he said he agreed with Charlie Kirk.
Oh, flipping
so once again, part of the issue is, and we know this is a long history of individuals who are turncoats and traitors, Benedict Arnolds, as we like to call them, right? We call them the Mobutu Sesekos of the world, right? And they are handsomely cared for financially by the enemies of our people. Matter of fact, if I wanted to be rich, all I gotta do is start spewing some anti-black rhetoric. He's a doctor with a PhD. He knows what he's talking about. And just tell them folks what they want to hear. I have a 5-bedroom house, 4-car garage in no time.
So Officer Tatum, would he be considered FBA?
Yes, he's an African American. Yes, he is.
Yeah. So some of these people online, these FBA people online that go after Caribbeans and Africans and stuff, would they go after him for saying something like that, or does he get a pass? Because
they never go after individuals in our community or ethnic group who are, of course, working in conjunction with the enemy of our people. They never do it.
Man.
Yeah. And let me see here, Mr. K says, you got to admit, Dr. Lumumba, that the NOI had it right with their excommunication moral code. In theory, yes. In practice, no. Because the reason why I say in practice, no, was because it was arbitrary, right? There were times, and of course, you could read this in Carl Evans' book, The Rise and Fall of the Messenger, or The Rise and Fall of Elijah Muhammad. Even, of course, Malcolm X mentions this in his autobiography, you may remember, where it got to the point where if an individual just raised questions, they were excommunicated, right? The women who, of course, were impregnated by Elijah Muhammad, they became excommunicated when they asked him to help provide for the children, right? So in theory, yes. In practice, no.
Malcolm excommunicated his own brother and never saw him again for Elijah Muhammad. And that was all on the line, wasn't it? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. This morning I was listening to your show on unleashing. Or leashing, I think you did the show on. Social leashing, yeah, sorry. Is it all right if I just ask you something about that? Because I know it's a different topic, but...
Please, yeah, go right ahead.
So, a little while back, I heard a story. This story happened in the UK, where a mother got into an argument with someone on the street, and she went back home, got her son and her son's friends to literally do a ride out on this person, and they attacked this person and they brutalized this person, etc., etc. But she used her sons and her son's friends to be violent towards someone else. Is that a form of leashing? Or like what
Well,
you
yes,
were saying?
yes. Dr. C. Hassan Johnson would call that black leashing, where an individual uses a criminal element to attack
Right.
a man, right? Blue leashing is when a woman would call the police or threaten to call the police on a man to either what control him, put him on a leash, or of course in retaliation, not because she's actually afraid of being or is in danger or has been harmed, but simply because she's mad at him. Black leashing was when the person uses the criminal element. I'll argue that social leashing is a result of the ineffectiveness of black leashing and blue leashing. So the person looks to defame one's character by making libelous statements and defamatory statements via social media.
Right. Okay. And it's always is it always the male that's used? It's never the other way around, or is it just
Well, of course,
through that
I'm
lady?
focusing on I was focusing on issues that men face.
That
I'm quite
means all
sure.
right. Okay.
Yeah, I'm quite sure that there are some men who engage in this type of behavior, but we know that by definition, right, the
Mm.
majority of the time it's a woman who's engaging in this type of behavior.
Right. Okay. Cool. All right. Yeah. I just wanted to just get some
Yeah.
clarification on
Well,
that. That's
and
all.
I would get, and I played a video last night, but for example, if you had a argument with your girlfriend or ex-girlfriend, right, and she said something you didn't like, you wouldn't, more often than not, you wouldn't call the police on her and make up a story to have her arrested.
No, of course not.
Right? But we
Yeah.
find more often than not when this happens, it's being done by the female or by the woman, not the man.
Mm.
Right? You more often than not, you wouldn't go and try to file a restraining order against the person just because you didn't like something they said.
No. Yeah.
Right? So this is something that we find taking place. And one of the brothers said, we're dealing with a lot of issues in the community. Why are you doing a show on this? And I said, because this is something that affects us even before we go into the community. This is something that's taking place, institutionally in the home.
Yeah.
Before you even go out into a world that we know is vehemently anti-black, you're dealing with this in the home. And I played a clip from the movie Three Strikes, starring, I think, Brian Hooks is his name. And there's a scene where he gets out of jail. He meets up with E40. E40 gives him some money because he did a bid for E40. He gets home and his girlfriend says, "Where were you?" He says, "Hey, I'm a grown man. You can't just be questioning me like that." And she just smacks the bejesus out of him.
Wow.
And then he says, "Hold on. You ain't going to be putting your hands on me." She smacks him again. Bow. So then he says, "You know what?" And when he says, "You know what?" she runs and grabs the phone and says, "Oh, I'm going to call the police." And he's like, "All right, hold on, wait, hold on. I just got out of jail. I'm on probation. Don't do all of this." So he has to either accept being what? A victim of IPV, or you could go to jail.
That's no choice, really, is it?
So very quickly, Mr. K says, snapshot, even the FBAs who swear they have no bigotry towards Africans, Caribbeans, never hold accountability to Tariq, let alone other FBAs for promoting bigotry against Caribbeans and Africans. Very true. See here, even the FBAs who claim they don't hate Africans. Okay, yeah. So this is a real issue. So social leashing is an issue that I coined, based, of course, it is a derivative of the work of Dr. T. Hassan Johnson. If you don't know who Dr. T. Hassan Johnson is, of course, he has a thriving YouTube channel. He's a full professor in the Department of Africana Studies at Fresno State University. We're good friends. He, of course, wrote the book, Solutions to Anti-Black Misandry. I've had him on the platform a couple of times. And so I definitely think you should support his work and, of course, buy his book.
Thanks to that person that wrote that comment, because that was the next thing I was going to bring up about Tariq, because I think I remember him saying he was going to lead the charge for getting reparations or something like that.
Yes.
But he's never, he doesn't ever seem to be in the spaces where these conversations are taking place. He lives in California, I believe, or somewhere around there. And there was someone on another channel, I can't remember what channel it was, who actually was turning up to those reparations meetings, and he was saying Tariq never came to one of them. But it's interesting that his following will give him a wide berth for not doing that. Like, they should be on him. Like, you said you was going to do this. We've donated X amount of money to you to do this, if they have. And you're not doing anything, but they're not holding them accountable. It's almost like Trump and his MAGA followers. They don't hold him accountable when he doesn't perform or he doesn't do what he says he's going to do. I don't know, man. It's just weird. It's like, do you people want this stuff or don't they? And it doesn't seem like they really do. It's just easier to just get online and shout and talk down on other people, which is sad, really.
Absolutely. And of course, like I said, Brother Dwayne Omawale, as you all know, resident historian, one of the things he shared with me, he said, I really question the efficacy, of course, of his advocacy, is he doesn't have a background in, of course, policy formation or influencing policy formation. But that's an actual skill set that you need. Sister Farida, who, of course, is leading the, of course, Fraud Must Go movement in Togo, has a background, and of course, policy formation and influencing policy at the federal or state level. And so that was a question. And of course, I think once he had that rally or meeting where it devolved into, of course, infighting, and individuals were literally trying to fight each other, I think he realized, okay, I need to just focus on, of course, the social media aspect of what I have to say. Now, of course, I'm speculating. I've never met him, never had a conversation with him. But the reason why I make that argument is because there was a time where there was a Twitter conversation amongst FBAs regarding reparations. So I log into the conversation, and these were individuals simply arguing and cursing each other out, talking about, if we were in person, I would beat you up. And the guy who invited me, I said, wow, is this the type of community? These are the type of people you are typically in community with. And he says, no, this is bad for my brand. I'm going to leave. Down there was the reality of the situation was they tend to bring in individuals who are poorly educated, right? And so it leads to this type of hood type mentality where individuals are just threatening each other, trying to do harm to each other. And I think he realized that maybe I'm out of my depth here, and I would just focus on social media, making products to sell, rather than trying to put myself in a space where I'm actually being someone who is advocating for, of course, a change in, of course, public policy.
Yeah, because there was an event that I remember that he'll bring out some memories. Now, there's an event that I remember that he did at Washington. I think it was like where the Million Man March, in DC.
Yeah.
But he scheduled it at a time when Congress was on recess. So it was like, who's gonna be there to see or to hear your protest if they're all on recess? But people just still went along with it and acted like it was a big success and all of that stuff, and just like there's nothing being achieved here. Like,
right. So someone none other than Batty, I hope you could tap in and be part of the conversation. As you know, you can use the pseudonym. I presume that is the pseudonym that you're using. And of course, you can tap in. You do not have to come up to be part of the conversation. But I will push back, right? Of course, FBA is a term that has been in use since the 2020s. At the time, of course, the term was African American and Black American. As an African American, I would argue that I don't think you can say that all African Americans have issues with other Black people. There are some African Americans who engage in that type of Afrophobic bigotry, right, anti-Black bigotry, but not all. And so I just want to make that very clear. And that is not on a macro level, right? We are on a monolith. There are, on the coastline, there are some who, of course, take issue with brothers and sisters from other countries. There are some who embrace brothers and sisters from other countries. And I've stated this ad nauseum on my platform, that it was an elder from Liberia who led me to consciousness. And there was a mother from South Africa who helped lead me to consciousness, right? And so, matter of fact, there was an elder from Liberia, Dr. Boykas Trey, who was like, why don't you celebrate Kwanzaa? I've never even heard of it. What is Kwanzaa? Right? And this is a brother who's a continental African celebrating Kwanzaa, and I knew nothing about it.
Yeah. I got to say, like, from my experience, like the FBA thing, I think is really just an online thing, because I was in New York last year and I interacted with a lot of Black people out there. I even went to the Malcolm X place up in Harlem.
Yeah.
And I just missed his 100-year anniversary thing, because I was just there a couple of days before that. But like I say, all of the black people that I came into contact with were really nice. They were like really open and friendly, and I was chatting to them about loads of different things. So the stuff that's online, I don't think it's a reflection of the vast majority of people in America, or black people in America at all. So please don't think that I think that of everyone from that community, because I don't. I think it's just a few vocal people online, and online makes things bigger than they actually are. Because I think if we were to walk into any random neighborhood and spoke to a young person and said, "Hey, have you heard the term FBA?" I'm pretty sure most of them will say, "What's that?" Because it's not something that is on a tick box when you tick your ethnicity on an official form or anything like that. It's not. I just think it's more of an online thing, really. It's not. I don't know that it translates over to the real world for most people.
Yeah, well, I know Brother Bequan shared with me. Brother Bequan, that's of course from Sierra Leone. He told me there was a brother that he was cool with, where he came to his home, they ate dinner with the brother. They came to their home and ate dinner with them. He ate, of course, the Sierra Leone cuisine, and then Tariq Nasheed comes out with the concept of FBA, and the brother stopped talking to him.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think, like I said, that speaks to that liminal identity where individuals are searching for a sense of who they are, and typically when people have a liminal identity, or it's easy for them to be influenced by external factors regarding who and what they are.
Yeah. Anyway, I've got to go, I'm afraid. So it was good chatting to you, and I'll look out for the next show. Yeah. All right.
Yes, sir.
Take care. Sir. All right.
No problem. So, someone none other than Batty, you can tap in and be part of the conversation. We'd love to hear from you, hear your perspective. I know you're out on the East Coast, and I am in the Midwest, where we say we aim about mid-chest. You know what I mean? Growing up, I had good and bad experiences, some with Africans, some African Americans, and African Caribbeans. Yes. I think that's the issue. It's not a monolith. I mean, oftentimes it comes down to a person's, of course, personal experience and even their political ideology in terms of how you're going to be able to engage with, of course, African people. Okay, you're in the South. Okay, and so I think that's something that we have to consider, of course, when we talk about these conversations of intra-communal issues or bigotry. So, I've always made the argument that it's not an issue of a person's nationality, ethnicity, but of their politics. Right? We have individuals throughout the world who seek to identify with the power structure as opposed to their own people, and are willing to work to the benefit of the power structure for their own individual and personal gain. So, something to consider once again when we're discussing regarding intra-communal anti-Black bigotry. But once again, Summer None Other Batty. The link's in the description. The link is in the chat. I can put the link in the chat again if you like. Definitely want to hear from you all before we close out. Happy Pan-African Monday to everyone. Frank Zanu. Let me look this guy up. I'm not familiar with a Frank Zanu. So you said you're at work. Okay, understood. Frank Zanu. Frank Zanu. I am not familiar with Frank Zanu. Tell me about him. Yeah, so if you can tell me about Frank Zanu, so he's he's from Benin-born American YouTuber. He guest sites for leadership. Okay. I told him to contact you because you have a PhD. He got scared. Interesting. Well, I appreciate you giving me the shout out. I definitely appreciate that. I guess, I've been putting a lot of work because I remember initially I always would send people to someone, Dr. C. Johnson, and other scholars, and now people are sending people my way. So I definitely appreciate that. I appreciate the love. But I guess Frank Zanu, I don't know who he is. Benin-born American YouTuber. He claimed makes this. Okay, so he's a YouTuber. I see. All right. Let's clarify. Okay, so maybe I'll try to reach out to him. I'll write his name down, try to look him up, see what he's about, see if we can, of course, develop a conversation or colloquy on, of course, my live. Colloquy on my live. But Bequan shared that with me as well, that he would have conversations with individuals, direct them to my platform or our platform, because it's not my platform. I don't work here unilaterally. And then, of course, they were like, no, right? I'm not going to be part of the conversation, because typically what we're able to do is highlight the person has significant gaps in knowledge regarding the issue that they're speaking on. And that's something that's extremely unfortunate. That's one of the benefits, of course, of higher education, particularly graduate education, that if you're going to actually address a particular issue, you have to show that you first off have a significant knowledge base regarding the history of that issue. So, for example, as many of you may be aware, yeah, will you ever appear on Roland Martin's show, Dr. Lumumba? That's a great question, Mr. K. I really appreciate that. As I said before at the top of the show, part of the reason I'm doing this show is, of course, the email that you sent me last night. I would hope so. I've reached out to Roland Martin. I've emailed him about being on his platform, and I've never heard back. I've probably emailed over 50 to 60 individuals, different platforms, podcasts, etc., requesting to be on the show, and I never hear back, ever. So I would argue maybe part of the issue is maybe they're focused more on entertainment than actually serious scholarship. I haven't been on Dinah's show. It seems to have downgraded how. I know my show, unfortunately, we're dealing with a lot of actually throttling down, right? To where I'm dealing with a situation where I'm not getting the views that I used to, particularly just for my Black History Fact. I would drop a Black History Fact every day. We get typically 50 to 1,000 views, and now I'm getting maybe 10 or 12. So I think part of that may have to do with the content that I'm making. We're the home of African Center News and Information. I think that may be an issue for, of course, YouTube and its algorithm. But I would definitely check out for the Dinah show. But one of the reasons that I mentioned this before I stopped rocking with Dinah, I told him this was because he continued to make claims that were adverse to facts on his platform. We did a show together about Pan-Africanism, addressed a lot of the misinformation that he was promoting. And then a week later, he was back on the show making the same claims. So that put me in a position, I said, I can't take this guy serious, right? Because he's now knowingly and willingly promoting misinformation. So I have an issue with that, a major issue with that. It's my belief, and maybe this is the scholar in me, the PhD in me, that when you have a platform, you have a responsibility to your subscribers, your constituents, and really out of respect to them, to provide them with factual information. I was having a conversation with an individual who works, of course, with the local schools, and she talked about there was an article that she had the students read, and it was filled with misinformation. And she said, well, who do you think this article, of course, is targeted to? And they said white people. She said it correctly. That is correct. So a lot of this is just rooted in manipulation. Extremely unfortunate, but hopefully we can do something about that. Let's see here. Says, yep, Donis has gotten from bad to worse, especially with his co-host Kala Genesis and Brandon. Yeah, and so that was an issue as well. Brandon, of course, we would do some shows. He would engage in a foul form of anti-Black bigotry. So, of course, he was banned from the show. Kayla Genesis tends to make claims that are just completely adverse to facts. I know he made a claim, and I was on the platform once, where he stated that African-American people never fought against, of course, the Holocaust of enslavement. We had no significant wars or victories. I gave examples of the Maroons here in the good old U.S. of A., particularly the Great Dismal Swamp that straddles the Virginia-North Carolina border. We talk about the Great Negro Flood in Florida, a number of other issues. These are things that I actually address in my dissertation, right? Shout out to scholarship, right? 246 pages of the greatest shit I ever wrote, my dissertation. And then he just said, well, that's just feel-good history. I said, no, it's not feel-good history. It's factual. It's actual history, right? So it's unfortunate, but this is what's going on. And so I told Dinus, man to man, one-on-one, I said, I don't take you serious because you have a platform. Why are you allowing individuals to come on your platform and make claims that, as you would say, because you're Pan-Africanist, are adverse to facts? And he says, well, it's just a call-in show. So I have an issue with that. Of course, I like to do my due diligence. And of course, if I'm going to do a show on a particular issue, provide my audience with factual information. Now, you could do whatever you want with that information, but I think just for me, it's my responsibility. So extremely unfortunate, and that's why I haven't been on his show in quite some time. And I don't think that they're serious at all. A great example would be Brandon. He went on Dr. Golly, what is his name? He used to work at Temple. I think it's called Night School, Office Hours. With Dr. Mark. Yeah, Mark Lamont Hill. He has a show called Office Hours. I like the name, by the way. Brandon comes on the show and he's making a number. So most people don't know Dr. Mark Lamont Hill is actually a scholar on Palestinian affairs. Like, that's actually his wheelhouse. His field of inquiry, his research focuses on Palestine. So Brandon comes on the platform making a number of claims that were versus the facts, and so he corrected him. And Brandon does a reaction video saying, "Oh, he was just against me because X, Y, Z." One of the examples, another example was Dr. Mark Lamont Hill said that he's a member of the Green Party, and Brandon says, "Well, the Green Party is really just Democrats by another name," and he says, "Actually, they aren't. Their policy positions are completely antithetical to that of Democrats and Republicans." And then, of course, Brandon said, "Well, why are we even talking about that?" He says, "Well, you brought it up." Right. And so just a lot of misinformation. I think Brandon lost his supermarket job, so he pivoted to conservatism for money solely. Why would he ruin his Kenya Airbnb business? So I didn't know that when you say he ruined the Airbnb business, what, I didn't know that took place. So yeah. And so then we have a lot of people who, because they do business in Africa, they would make the presumption that makes them a Pan-Africanist, right? There's a lot more than simply engaging in business in Africa that makes one a Pan-Africanist. And there are a number of individuals who, of course, make that claim. I also, you said Mark Lamont Hill. And of course, I have a lot of disagreements with Mark Lamont Hill as well. But I reached out to him as well, sent him an email about coming on the platform, discussing particular issues. And he never responded. So family, I'm telling you, I reach out to individuals on a regular basis, right, about coming on, having an intelligent, intellectually curious conversation about a particular issue that is part of my wheelhouse. And I never, keyword, never hear back, right? No, I don't grip. That is very true. I was even told by Brother Bequan, he says, you don't allow people to come on and engage in bigotry. You actually have structure on your show. You have some ground rules. And it's part of the reason why it's not growing, but I'm trying to do as much as I can. So they're not serious. They need content and views. Yeah, I think everybody needs content and views, but I think, at what price, right? I'm trying to make more content right now. I've even did some boxing reaction videos, not because I'm just trying to make content, but most of you who know me know that I am a boxing aficionado. I'm a hardcore boxing enthusiast. I have a subscription to Ring Magazine. I've had one since I was 18, 19 years old. So I really have a love and passion for the sport. My concern, once again, is that, and I did something I shared with Brother Bequan, Brother Dwayne, Brother Jabril Africa, who of course is the Pan-African organizer extraordinaire, right, is that when unfortunately, we're in a position where there's a lot of fires we have to put out. The number of issues we're trying to address, the political, social, material conditions of our people, education, psychological, etc. But we also have to address the misinformation campaign. Extremely, as you can imagine, frustrating to have to deal with. But once again, we try to do what we can. So, let's see, Dr. Moon, if you make your channel into a social media brand like DJ Vlad, these folks you reached out to will be reaching out to you too. Okay, I don't know exactly what you mean by that. BGS, if you could turn your camera on and cue, just want to make sure that you're not trolling, and then I could bring you into the live. So once again, just turn your camera on and cue, just to make sure you're not trolling, and then I will bring you into the live. So please send me an email, Mr. K, about what you mean by that. Maybe we could go in a little deeper, and then of course we can have that conversation. What do you think about Nature Boy? So I read like one article about the Nature Boy, and from what I read, it was kind of cultish. I know Brother Rakeem Shabazz, Watched It on TV, put up a post where he was talking about this really metaphysical. The issues you're facing is because you haven't tapped into your spiritual nature. And Brother Shabazz said, but part of this has to deal with not doing any actual research, right? Because if you did, you would have to focus on anti-Black racism, white hegemony, of course, the political and social economic dominance and military dominance of the global North over the global South, right? But that doesn't take place. I think he was a charlatan, right? I think that he was taking advantage of Black people, not only Black people who, of course, weren't well educated, but also Black people who, okay, BGS, okay, got you. Okay, I'll bring you in momentarily. Okay. But I think he also was trying to take advantage of people. He was taking advantage of people who, of course, were down on their luck. We tend to find this is very common in terms of the Black community. We talk about cults, where individuals are facing tough times. They're looking for solutions to the problems. There may be some desperation here. You have individuals who are coming around seeking to do what? Take advantage of them. And I do apologize. I'm becoming a bit strident here, but I have a major issue with anyone taking advantage of someone, particularly Black people taking advantage of Black people who are in a situation in which they are in dire need of help. This is a major issue for me. I just do not think highly of individuals who do that in any way, shape, or form. I have a zero tolerance policy. But BGS, I do apologize. Go right ahead.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I've been in the game a long time, and basically, you see a lot of these people pop up is because um, two things: social media, and really after 9/11, and when the government came in, basically pretty much broke up most of what we used to call the conscious Black community. The we called it pro-Black now, but kind of broke it up and kind of scattered people. And then with social media, a lot of these people that used to be had to be verified through networks aren't verified anymore. So anybody can
Mm,
pop up. I'm pro-Black and I stand for this. I'm saying plant their flag and get following, because there's no way to actually come back and actually verify these people who they are and what they stand for. So, but it is what it is. That's what we call social media, and this is the um, environment that we live in now. So,
mm,
so like Nature Boy, and there's a few others that come in and they mismatch a whole bunch of things that have been published, and they'll mix it up with some things that are not true, and then they'll put it out there, and they'll get a following, and then they spread misinformation, or I would say misinformation, but disinformation. Um,
yeah. I would argue both misinformation and disinformation.
yeah,
And please just help me very quickly. Nature Boy was the individual in Georgia who
yeah.
basically was running like a sex cult.
Yeah, a sex code, and he's not the first one, but a sex code, and then I think he moved to an island or something like that, and he
Okay.
brought his enclave with him. That's not new. Uh, uh, what is it? People have been doing that forever. Even back after emancipation, people were doing that, starting little cults and stuff like that, and with women and stuff like that, religious cults, because they were charismatic, and that happens all the time. So. Um, it's just social media gives you a platform to actually put that out there.
Yeah. And some of these individuals actually have a publicist,
Yes.
right? They have a publicist. They have a because I've actually been in contact with possibly hiring a publicist to try to
Hmm.
get my name out there. And I told the guy, I said part of it isn't just because I want fame and notoriety, but I just become extremely upset with the misinformation that is
Hmm.
being promoted to our people. And these
Hmm.
are individuals. I give you all an example, and I talked about this last year, where one of my
Hmm.
students came into my office. I said, Dr. L, do you know who 19 Keys is? I said, I never heard of him. So I said, listen, I gotta go. I'm about to get off. I'm gonna go to the gym. I'm gonna handle my BI at the gym like I always do, right? And so I listened to the video. It was a Breakfast Club interview, and the
Hmm.
guy started off in the first 5 minutes making claims that were ahistorical in the first
Hmm.
place.
Right.
So I knew right then and there. I said, this guy's a charlatan. And I told my student, but you aren't as well read as I am. Right? You're not as knowledgeable as me about Black history and so on and so forth. So you don't know that this guy's running game, but I do.
Hmm.
Another example I can recall, I was looking at joining an organization because, organize. That's what
Right.
Kwame Ture taught us.
Right.
I'm about to join this organization. I'm not going to name the organization. And what ended up taking place was the guy said, yeah, patriarchy is part of white supremacy, and African cultures were matriarchal. And so I said, well, brother, I have a PhD and background in African studies. That's not accurate at all.
Hmm.
And so I said, you're able to get this off because what? People don't know any better. You're able to take
Right.
advantage of people's ignorance. And I,
Right.
I'm not even making a judgment call on if you should be pro patriarchy or not. That's not even the argument that I'm making,
Hmm.
right? The problem is that you're disseminating false information to people. That's the problem. So then another brother who was in the audience said, yeah, I got a PhD in Ethiopian history. Ethiopia has always had a patriarchal culture.
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
Hmm.
And then the guy's like, okay, we're going to break things down and we're going to have to end early. So yeah, cause now you're being called out. Because I remember when I was
Right.
coming up, and of course, my training as an activist, as a pan-Africanist, came through the
Right.
academy, where I had brothers and sisters telling me, well, elders actually saying, listen, if you got a speaking engagement, you better make sure you stick to what you know, because you make
Yes.
a claim that's false, there's gonna be
Yeah.
somebody in the audience who
Yeah.
what sharp shoot your ass.
Yeah. Yep.
But
Yeah.
now when you do that, guess what the person's gonna say? Oh, he's just a hater.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, that's that shows you what kind of room that you're in, if people
Yeah,
accept that. Yeah.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Very quick, let me get to these comments, and then BGS, I want to get back to you because you were putting us on some game, and of course, giving me a wealth of knowledge as well. So, so we don't have Tony Brown's journal. He says he's disgusting. So I presume Sister Shy. Shout out to the 614. You're in Columbus. You're referring to Nature Boy. Reparation. Let's see here. This can come up here. Reparation has always been an African Union claim to which Yale University study resulted in the need for reparations for the descendants of both Caribbean Africans within America to maintain status. Lumumba, I have a book that was published in the 1960s called Black Cults and Black Sex. So yeah, these cults and charlatans have always been around, like BGS said. Facts
Mm-hmm.
on facts. Wealth within America, along with the classification to remain as Nigerian, Haitian, Jamaican, and so forth, that would forever separate them from the overall indigenous American Black population. So hopefully you could tap in 2.0, and of course we can dig a little bit deeper into what you're trying to articulate there. BTS,
Yeah.
go right ahead.
Like they said, in fact, I have to do a presentation tomorrow on reparations. So on the show I actually do in real life. So, and my thing about the FBA ADOS fight was I've seen this. Like I said, I've seen this before, and you've been in the game long enough that you've seen this before. Okay. If you have the Democrats on the ropes and they're willing to discuss reparations openly, you should get behind one voice and not the audience. Okay. And even though I like Tariq Nasheed, I've helped him in the past. Okay. I like Yvette and I forget his name, but I like that what they're doing. But the thing is, if somebody's got momentum and got the ear of the dominant population, okay, everybody else should be muted and get behind the push, because it's hard enough to actually break that veil and get attention to reparations, because we've had hundreds of reparations ideas and movements and stuff like that in the Black community over the past 100 years. Okay.
Yes, very true.
Tons of them. Okay. If you finally got one to get traction, okay, and unfortunately, when it was happening, I knew so what happened. I said, there's going to be somebody that is going to have a counter narrative, and they're going to start fighting, and then the Democrats going to let them fight, and then they're going to forget all about it. This is exactly what happened. So I don't have a problem with FBA or ADOS. What I'm saying is the strategy of what they proposed was ill-timed. Because I've seen this happen before. You get a movement that's getting traction, and then somebody says, "I have a better idea." Instead of letting the idea that has traction move ahead and do what it does, okay. Somebody else says, "I don't think you're doing it the right way." We start splitting the demographic. You start fighting each other, and then guess what? They'll say, "Well, you don't have to do nothing." Okay, they're fighting amongst themselves. Let them do what they do. That's exactly what happened.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. You're 100% correct. So very quickly, 2.0, I want you to tap in and be part of the conversation, because I'm still trying to get an understanding of the argument that you're trying to make. You're stating that this was submitted on behalf of the African Union, not the American Blacks. If I remember correctly, this was done because they were looking at reparations for all members of the African diaspora, not specifically African Americans. So
the thing is, African Americans were not making a claim to the UN. They were making a claim to the government that owed them reparations. Okay, America does not own Jamaica reparations. Okay, the UK does. Now you're part of the Commonwealth. Okay, they need to make their claim to the Queen, because they're not American. Okay. They weren't bought here. They didn't go through slavery underneath chattel slavery underneath America. They didn't go through Jim Crow underneath America. Okay. They have no claim to American money or American government.
So very quickly, and BGS, There's a
Hmm.
question for you. Could you please share your knowledge about the working relationship you have with Tariq Nasheed? We're gonna get to that
Oh,
right in a
okay.
second.
Okay.
Real,
The thing
real
is,
quick, but I'm gonna read this comment.
okay.
Americans aren't going to support any blackness, black diaspora, Pan Africans, nor the African Union, who is listed in the JE files to get reparations to maintain their wealth status off of America.
Okay.
Interesting. Once again,
Okay. No group of people are going to allow you to claim reparations underneath their government. I don't care who you are. Jamaica's not. We can't go to Jamaica or go to the UK and claim reparations from the UK. Okay. We can't
right.
go to Brazil and claim reparations from Portugal. Okay. We can't do that because we're not under their system. And
Right.
no American will say that we're not going to to someplace else and claim reparations. Okay, now there are two places that are controversial that we can claim reparations. Right? Okay, the people that sold us and the people that bought us. That's one side that we don't talk about, but I'm going to talk about that tomorrow. In fact, one of our esteemed colleagues in the Black Manosphere space, Dennis Sperling, he actually talks about it. We should vie for reparations of some sort, not necessarily monetarily, from the people that sold us, because they're just as responsible as the people that bought us.
Yeah. So one of the issues I had with Dennis Sperling, when he did a show with Crimson
Uh-huh.
Tide,
Okay.
and I actually did a reaction video. This was last year when I was still in California, and the thing that he stated was that African and West Indian immigrants were uh, receiving benefits from the U.S. government that were allocated for African Americans. And I said, well, my issue here was what benefits are you referring to? I'm an African American. If there are benefits we're supposed to be getting as African Americans, I want to know because I would want them.
I would want
So,
to. Yeah, I would want it too. I'm not aware of them.
right. And so I said, we tend to find these type of accusations that are being made that are extremely nebulous in nature. They can't pinpoint what is actually being done. Right. This reminds me of Tariq Nasheed when he said that Nigerians were having secret meetings with white people. I said, well, if the meeting is a secret, how did you know about it?
Yes.
Right. So it's just a lot of conspiratorial type talking points. But let's get to the question that Mr. K asked of you. And he said, could you please share knowledge about your working relationship?
Okay. Basically, I used to be on. I forget the name of the medium he was actually broadcasting on, and this was before I actually I wrote his Hidden Colors books. Okay, I think it's Hidden Colors, if I'm not mistaken. His videos. Okay, I actually turned him on to a bunch of scholars that I knew because I knew these people, right? Said talk to this guy. Okay, about what they know, because these are the scholars that we actually go to and talk to and read their books on and go to their speaking engagements. So talk to these people and they'll get you up on speed on whatever you actually want. So he did, I think, 4 Hidden Colors, okay, off of that platform. So yeah, 4 or 5. So basically, I gave him the idea to actually get in touch with these. Originally, he wasn't part of the so-called pro-black community, okay, or the conscious community. He was an outsider. So I just pointed him to a bunch of people that I knew that I had come up with, because I used to be part of ASCAC back in the 80s and 90s, which is the under what they called it, the Association of Classical African.
ASCAC. Yes, I'm familiar. One of my mentors was Ray Crow. My mentor was he was the president of the Midwest branch.
And the starter of it, Haru, she was here, so I knew all of them. So so a lot of these people that pop up, I met before they actually kind of became famous. So I just turned him on to those people, and that's where Hidden Colors came out of. So a lot of the people that you see in Hidden Colors, okay, we introduced him to those people. But you're at it, man. Conscious community is a very small community. It's not as big as people think it is.
This is very true. Very quickly, Logical Black, I need you to cam up in queue before I can bring you into live. Just need to make sure that you're not trolling. We had some issues when individuals trolling in the past. So if you can log in queue, or if you could cam up in queue, right, before I bring you into the live, just so I can make sure you're not trolling and you'll be part of the conversation. BGS, go right ahead. I apologize.
Yeah, because I found out through Dr. T-San, because he turned me on.
I'm sorry?
I said I found out about you through Dr. T. because
Oh, I,
we're
well, I
friends. Because
yeah,
we're
I definitely
friends. Yeah.
appreciate it. Yeah,
Yeah.
I definitely appreciate that. You know, Dr. Tia Sanjay. I mean, I tell him all the time, you're an Omega level black man, right? And I tell him this because I had never heard of, okay, logical black, you could turn your camera off, I will bring you in momentarily. I knew nothing about anti-black misandry until I started my PhD,
Okay.
right? And then I'm like, yo, this is real. I came across his work. The first article I read of his was The Myth of Black Male Privilege,
Oh yeah.
right? And so then, yeah, so he wrote that article, read
Uh-huh.
it. I think I even did a show on it, probably back in 2022. And then of course he wrote his book. So
Yeah.
then I bought the book, read the book, and so I remember reaching out to him,
Uh-huh.
and he was like, "Wow, like most people only read like the introduction; they don't actually read the whole entire book." I'm like, "Well, I'm an actual scholar, so yeah, I'm on one." And so that's when the conversation we end up to develop, you know, good relationship. And of course, he's been a mentor of mine, giving me
Mm-hmm.
advice, helped me get a job, so on and so forth
Mm-hmm.
in the academy. So extremely appreciative to Dr. Zia Johnson. But the
Yeah,
one thing
yeah.
I would also say is, and I can say this, is he isn't just someone who bloviates on social media.
No, no,
The
no.
work
He
that he
lives it.
does even in the
Yeah.
community is to help brothers, right?
Yes.
And and Dr. C.S. Johnson, we've had conversations. He said, "Look, I am pro-black. I care about Pan Africanism, etc." He said, "But as my youngest uncle would say on my mother's side, there are times we have to be honest. We're sleeping with the enemy."
Yeah.
And he
Yeah.
says, "So before we could go out into the community and work and build the community and make our environment better, before we even face anti-black racism in the world, we're dealing with things in the household."
Yeah.
And the thing about it was he's written a number of articles, I think, on Substack.
Mm-hmm.
And there were things that he talked about in his articles that I had experienced in past relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I'm like, you see my eyes, I'm like, man, like this dude really knows what he's talking about.
He does.
Yeah. So Logical Black, what say you?
What's going on, brother? Can you hear me?
I'm doing quite all right.
All right, good. What's good? What's good, BGS?
Hey, what's going on?
I'm an African American on all sides. I
Okay.
did live in Africa. I used to live in Botswana for about 2 years, from
Okay.
2021 to 2023,
Okay.
off and on. So I got the African experience. I'll say first off, we sometimes do have problems with Africans. You know what I mean? It's a family thing, though. I have a master's degree in STEM,
Mm-hmm.
and in the
Okay.
college, it was just me, a Nigerian brother, and a black girl from that real rich place in Maryland, that real rich county. I forget the name.
PG? PG, huh?
Yeah, or whatever the one is. Yeah.
Yeah, PG.
So
Yeah.
I've been in there with Nigerians, and that was my homie. But in my bachelor's, sometimes I roll across Africans, mostly Nigerians, and I'd say hi to them in the hallways, and there would just be no response. But at the same time, I've lived in Africa, and you know, I had money problems, and Africans helped me out, brought me food or whatever. You know what I mean? So it's not everything, but we do have problems. But this is too. It's too much. Right now, we're living in a COINTELPRO moment. COINTEL 3.0. It's too much.
Is it 2.0 or 3.0?
I said 3.0.
Okay.
3.0. I go to these people. I just went on Twitter X today, and you look all the way down their thing, and it's just anti-Africanism. Y'all are this, y'all are that, y'all are that. If y'all rewind back to 2020, we was seriously on code in 2020. I mean, we was burning shit down. The Wakanda was out. I mean, we was connected, and it was going down.
And if I could briefly interject, the time period you're speaking of, I do remember something that was being pushed, particularly in social media spaces, with this concept of B1, Black folks.
Oh yeah. B1 is doctor, not doctor, is Professor Black Truth. B1. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And then look
Black
at the switch around that they've had though. Look, I mean, all they talk about is they demonize other Black people. I told Africans this: the Black American and the South African are like twin brothers. We're in the same situation, and we're in a situation that we don't want to admit to. And the situation we don't want to admit to is the white people that we live under or next to don't like us. And that's the thing. Them South Africans, I keep telling them, if white people wanted to give you jobs, they would give it to you. Now, we keep talking about reparations. The white man said no. Trump said no. And I don't understand what the thing is we keep going for. And my thing is, there's even no wiggle room with our people. Like, let's say they say no money. All right, no money. Can we get education? Can we get housing? We really need land. We need to focus on them 40 acres.
Let me hear. I want to hear what you say about this. I also argue that part of reparations should be we should have tax-free status.
Okay. There's a way to do reparations. Okay. There's a way to do reparations properly. And in a few times that I've actually mentioned it on open air, okay, the government came. In fact, that was actually the first time I actually mentioned it on a broadcast. They actually turned off the broadcast because off the internet. So, but there's a way to do it, and the way we're doing it is not going to work because you can't. Well, power only recognizes power, right? You have to have leverage, and we don't have any leverage to actually ask for anything. Okay, we don't have no leverage. You have to have leverage. There's one way to do it, and Colin Powell had that idea. Okay, and had America done it and ignored Europe, okay, we'd had a reparations. Okay, Africa, well, China would not be in Africa. We'd have businesses and stuff started in Africa. There was a way to do it, and the United States is going to regret it. They're already regretting it, but they should have done it then. There's a way to do it, and the way to do it, believe it or not, is do what? Forget about all the other stuff. Okay, $5 trillion, whatever it is, in a sovereign wealth fund. Okay, and you get with the Africans. Okay, what we need is a right of return and ability to actually come in and invest, start businesses, and develop your continent. Okay, so we can make money, you can make money, and America can keep China out of Africa. They can keep their sphere of influence. It's a win for them because they spent $30 trillion trying to prevent this. Okay, they could spend $5, got rid of the reparations problem, got rid of the China problem, and it'd have been a win-win for Black Americans, Africa, and them. And that's the way you have to do business.
If I could, one of the issues is, and Sister Soldier talked about this nearly 30 years ago, over 30 years ago, when she was on the Phil Donahue show, and this is when golly, what is his name? He's from Sacramento. He wrote the book Race Matters. Cornel West, when he became a public intellectual. But she cooked them, and she said America has no interest in creating functional Africans at home or abroad.
Yeah, they do now. You know why they do? It's because they've lost the continent to China.
Oh, okay.
Now the whole we got to remember, got to hear the whole thing, right? The Chinese were actually pushing them in Europe out of the continent. Okay, it's because China came in with what? Because I was there in 2007, 2008, right? And the Africans weren't keen on the Chinese coming in, but guess what the Chinese came in with? Called a package, called money. Remember the East African Corridor in 2012, 2013? I know you know about that, right? Okay. That's because the Gaddafi got booted, and the Africans were going to kick them out. I said, okay, we told them, if you want to keep them, what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to come in and do the same thing to them that other people did for you. You got to come in and start putting in infrastructure, okay? Right. Start teaching these people, start developing the continent instead of just coming in and buying resources, okay? Okay, the thing is, we could have done that in 2003. The thing is, Europe does not want to let go of the continent. They still don't, okay? But now it's too late. They still don't. But now it's too late because they've lost it. Soros told me the exact same thing. You need to make friends over there while you still have money. And basically, the way it could have worked, it should have worked, especially when you had money, because you spent the money anyway. You spent $30 trillion anyway. You could have spent $5. Sovereign wealth fund, and say, hey, y'all want to go make money? Y'all want to develop? Hey, here's a whole here's $5 trillion in a sovereign wealth fund. Go give loans, start businesses, and go over there. And the Africans, hey, y'all have to open this stuff up for these African Americans. Come over and start developing your continent.
Logical Black, go right ahead.
You know what, though? I've come to this realization, especially seeing all these murders and lynchings of our people over the past few years.
Over the past few years, really? Okay.
I mean, all the time, but I'm saying the ramping up it. They would rather lose face, and lose power in the world than see Black people be equal in any way, and that's the insanity of the situation. rather than we could be their great. We could go over to Africa with Dangote and them boys, and we could have gas down to $2, if not $1 a gallon right now. But instead of, if they did that though, the what I've heard a white person say is nobody wants another China. They fear the ride. They really do.
They could have stopped the rise of China by doing that, and that's what we would have offered them.
It does, but you know what? They have such a thing with the black male that is.
The thing is, I know they have a thing. They don't want you to have no money. Don't want you to have no power. But thing is, what are they most afraid of? They're not mostly afraid of you. They're afraid of China. They were then. They've been afraid of China since 1990. The thing is, do you want them to develop it and take it away from you, or you actually want us to develop it and you keep a semi-control over the continent?
Mm-hmm.
Semi-influence over the continent.
And you've been there. When you walk around, you could see what China's built. Like I was like, who built that building? That's nice. They're like the Chinese. And even then, one thing that's said about the Chinese is that their buildings, their bridges, they fall apart after like 10, 15 years.
This is true. You know,
so we could even have came in with better infrastructure, but they don't want that. Like the junkie white man said, who owns the militia, he said we should just take Africa over and colonize it. Remember, he was drunk and he said that.
Who's the white man?
I forget his name. He's part of one of them, not a militia, but like a.
Oh, and well, yeah. If they could, they would.
Yeah, they're thinking that right now. It's we see America on decline. I mean, this thing with Iran and them forcing in there. It's just we're witnessing decline. I don't know how long it's going to take, but
it's almost over, boss.
It is. And then here's the question I got to ask, and I don't understand with all this stuff. What are black people going to do? We're so in.
You're in the passenger seat right now. Okay, and
we don't even want to be in charge of our own thing. It's just like, no, get out of here in my lineage. And I'm like, why don't we take care of ourselves?
Well, hold on real quick. I'm going to interject one of my. I would not argue that we, as a whole, don't want to take care of our own thing. I think there are a number of black people who are about that life, but I think the more prominent voices who are promoting nonsensical positions regarding how to address the issues that we face as the people, socially, politically, economically, are promoting that type of nonsense. And I make that argument because, you know, as a Pan-Africanist, I work not only in America to the benefit of African people, but even globally for the benefit of African people. And so I know that isn't true. But I just want to make, just very careful that we're not making broad sweeping indictments on entire demographic groups.
I don't say all of our people, but this FBA nonsense is just.
FBA and B1 is just the latest term, what you call black people to actually separate yourself. That's all it is. Okay?
And real quick, if I will, some of these issues as a result of miseducation. And I'm going to break down. I got a good brother. We grew up next door to each other. He's a Pan-Africanist like me. And growing up, since he was 8 years old, people told him he looked like Wesley Snipes. So every time I saw him, I'd be like, Blade, what's going on? Right? But he said, I said, we had a conversation once and he said, brother, our people, we're socialized not to do things for ourselves, not to actually act in our own best interest. I said, you're right. He says, well, why is that the case? I said, it's a byproduct of miseducation.
And it's a byproduct of slavery that's been passed down.
But I'm focusing specifically on miseducation because Ngugi wa Thiong'o talks about this, the former, he's his ancestor now, Kenyan theorist, activist, educator. Of course, Charles Mills, who wrote his canonical text in Black Studies, The Racial Contract, discusses this issue as well. And so what happens is part of the education is you're taught that your goal in life is your ultimate goal in life is to be a pathological adjunct to the white man and his wife, right? The second issue is whenever you learn about great black leaders, you only learn about black leaders who were integrationists, right? And so as a result, this plays a role in creating an archetype in which in the media plays a role as well. I'll give an example very quickly. Who's that sister? Stacey Abrams. She registered how many black people to vote in Georgia?
Right.
But the goal was for them to vote for what a white supremacist organization called the Democratic Party. Simply black people tend to just be the face of the party now. However, that no one mentions black people and give that type of praise and adoration to black people who actually were working to the benefit of black people. So some of it is socialization that, of course, is a derivative of vestiges of the Holocaust of enslavement. But a major issue is, of course, the miseducation that we face. That
Mhm.
plays a role in curating these type of worldviews and perspectives and values that are antithetical to our best interests.
What is what is the root of the miseducation though?
Well, the fact that we don't control the educational system.
And it's the culture that's been passed down by the women from slavery all the way down. Two good books, right?
Well,
Is
you kind of have a point there, and what I'm going to speak to that.
Go ahead.
Okay.
I just want to quote the two books first. Let me give you two books first.
Okay, go right ahead.
Okay, it is the Negro Family in the United States by Frazier, and
E. Franklin Frazier. That's right.
E. Franklin Frazier, and Dark Ghetto by what's his name? God, I'm losing it. Oh God, he actually did the doll study. What's his name? Clark.
Yeah.
I just did a review with Dr. Dunbar about Dark Ghetto. Okay, all that stuff is still with us. Okay.
Yes,
all that stuff is still with us.
And you know what? And the point you're making, I'm gonna cut you off as my platform, but I'm just excited.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I got some people who's cooking.
Go ahead, jump in.
I'm excited, as you can see, right? You're right about that, because and what E. Franklin Frazier talks about, it's been a long time since I read the book. I read it in the undergrad, but please you correct me if I'm wrong, is unfortunately what took place during the Holocaust of enslavement is what the women were almost taught to raise the children in a manner to be in fear and in awe of the white man and his wife.
Yes, of course.
Am I correct?
Yeah, she was put in that position.
Yeah.
Okay. She was put in that position. Okay. And the thing is, we never healed that. We never got rid of that. Okay. Even down to the civil rights. Okay. Why does 87% of affirmative action go to white women? How did that happen? Okay, why did Pauline Murray and the elite black women hand over control of civil rights to white women and give them all the benefits in '65? Okay, that's documented. She said it out of her own mouth. And why is Pauline Murray a co-founder of Now back in 1963? Nobody talks about that, and our black female scholars don't talk about it, even though they know about it.
Yeah,
that's where the miseducation comes from. A lot of I have to tell you, you're a PhD, man. You know all the stuff that's hidden. What you can't talk about. Okay, what you ain't gonna do is talk about this. Yeah,
and in fact, and of course we're gonna bring Wilsonian and Garveyite in. South Passe, these old pound brothers. I know y'all don't play, right? What's
going on with Sonia, man? Long time no see.
One of the issues that we tend to find, particularly in the academy, right, is, and Dr. Citizen Johnson talks about this in his book, Solution to Anti-Black Misandry, is a concept of anti-Black male misandry. There's a form of anti-Black male misandry he talks about called heterophobia. Where there's this irrational fear of heterosexual black men. He says, we know where this goes. This even goes beyond the Holocaust of enslavement. This goes back to the Middle Ages and the enslavement of African men by what Arabs and Muslims and Jewish people, etc. He says, hey, we find it's even in the halls of the academy, black feminists have co-opted this worldview of black heterosexual black men. And then they would still, they would treat you like your presence is antithetical to the forward progress of education in these institutions. So that goes into, of course, part of what you're talking about. But Sonia and Garveyite, what's the word?
What's going on, beloved? Master teacher, long time no see. Hopefully everything is well.
You stateside or where you at, man?
Yes, sir. I am back in Babylon in Florida. I'm literally on lunch break.
Okay.
Doing refrigeration now.
Oh, yeah.
Peace to the original man and original women that are watching this. I'm going to make this quick and concise, the best that I can, only in regards to the title of the show.
Yes, sir.
When it comes to reparations, things of that sort, I quickly want to posit, or at least preface by saying, growing up in a Haitian American household, the phrase reparation was never used. The reason I want to make that clear is because it seems, and I can't call it, I don't know every black woman's experience dealing with those of different ethnic groups, But whether I'm around Haitians, Americans, Jamaicans, those from the Caribbean, those from the continent, maybe it's an indictment on the people who I hang with, but who've never really had a strong or a deep conversation in regards to reparation. That leads to the statement that um, there aren't any quote unquote bloodsuckers that I know who are rubbing their hands like Birdman, thinking that when African Americans get their reparations, that they're going to get it too. Now, since you brothers are older than me, I think you guys remember when Aristide calculated the debt that was owed to Haiti in regards to their liberation,
Right.
and that's the closest that I can think of when it comes to Haitians expecting reparations. I'm
Okay.
going to take it a step further, but also stating that, again, we know there are African Americans who are pro reparations, who are anti reparations. Perhaps my issue is that FBA and the other alphabet crew, they like to spotlight the Africans who did not build this country and assume that that we all think that African Americans don't deserve it, so which obviously isn't the case. And even being a conscious brother, it never dawned on me that if or when African Americans receive reparations, that I would get a cut. That's absolutely asinine. And to take it one step further, how does the old adage go that the white man?
Very quickly, with Sonia and Garvey, I know you're cooking, but I just want to say that's not just as a 9, it's as a 10, as 11, and as a 12. Go ahead.
That's true. Yeah.
No, so the thing is, that as the adage goes, at least in our conscious community, the white man knows us better than we know ourselves. So this foolishness that somehow we're going to slither in line in front of African Americans with our hand out, expecting some type of reparations, if it was to happen, again, is absolute foolishness. And one thing before I go back on mute, I see the alphabet crew will usually pull up. You know what? I'll say this. I pray to the ancestors that this is a psyop. I say that because it would truly be disheartening if this is something completely organic. And they're taking it back to the 80s and 90s. And don't get me wrong, I'm not here to absolve those of their shortcomings, of their sins, of their mistakes. Wanting to show that African Americans don't have culture. Somebody who's absolutely in Florida and loves the Geechee Gullah. I take slight with that. So don't get me wrong. I'm not here to, under any circumstance, absolve anybody. But again, this Jewish conspiracy in blackface of those in the diaspora who want to take from African Americans what truly owed to them is absolute foolishness. The rain is coming in hard. I'm going to go back on mute, and it was good speaking to you, brothers. Peace to everybody. Haiti City.
Don't be a stranger, man.
Yes, sir. I'll pay my tether tax too.
You know what? I think if we get ours and the United States want to give y'all some money, I had no problem with it. I really don't.
Again, right. Again, there's a line, there's a queue.
Yeah.
Those who built the foundation will get theirs first, and those who are affected, for example, by foreign policy, things of that sort, will get theirs as well. The idea is that African Americans will create the framework in which others in the diaspora can make the same claim.
I agree with that. That's why I have that's why I think reparations be paid in a sovereign wealth fund, so everybody can actually get something. Okay, instead of the white man said we're not going to get anything for our money, blah blah blah. No, instead of paying off guilt. No, got a plan for you. This helps you, helps us, helps everybody. So it makes sense to make this deal and make this money instead of us struggling, begging for this goddamn, for this reparations. Okay, we have a solid plan that will actually help you and us, and that's how you do business. Okay, because reparations is business. You're on mute.
I'm glad you brought that up. You know, I always mention Dr. Kendra King. She wrote a book,
Uh-huh.
Understanding Contemporary African American Politics. And one of the things he talked about was that the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., you know, you can't mention Dr. King without Coretta Scott King, put
Hmm.
some respect on both their names. He stated that politics is the business of who gets what, when, where, and how.
Yes,
It's
exactly,
about the
exactly.
distribution of resources.
Yeah, yeah. I could tell you about the African development, man. The Chinese did not want to do that. Okay, they did not want to do it. They didn't want to help you develop Africa because that actually raises the prices of their goods. They didn't want to do that. Okay, why did they do it? It's because they need it's part of their plan. Was it Belt and Road without Africa?
Well, I mean, this is very true, very true.
They
They had to
they they
promote the
they they,
economy
they
and
had
then
to have it.
use raw materials.
And they had to prove that they could do that to everybody else. That's why they did it. And we told them at the time, like in 2010, 2011, if you don't do this, I said everything else you're going to try to do is going to fall apart. And they did it. So that's why you see all this development in Africa through China. It ain't out of the goodwill of their hearts. Let's put it that way. It's business. And I figure if we do the same thing as far as reparations, let's stop trying to guilt trip them into doing something. Let's sit down and do some business. You know, Colin Powell had it right. Okay, now the Europeans did not want it. It's because they eat off the continent, and if we're there, we're going to raise the prices on them. There's a whole stuff about Gaddafi and a whole bunch of other stuff that Europe is still trying to cling to that. But the thing is, America would not be in the position that it's in, would not have spent a tenth of the money that they spent on hell, you just spent $2 trillion in an Iran war that you could have prevented by allowing black soldiers and black sovereign wealth funds and black businessmen and engineers over on the continent in 2003. You'd have saved yourself $30 trillion. And kept your place. Now you spent $30 trillion for nothing, and you're gonna lose that place anyway. Which is why they didn't listen to Colin Powell back in 2003, because he said, "I want AFRICOM to come in and police the Sahel, so they actually bring in people and bring in development to the continent." Right? Europe didn't want to have it because they didn't trust black men and black people to come in and do that, because they said we're actually too nice to Africans because we see ourselves in them. That's why they didn't.
Well, I mean, I don't. Well, I will push back a little bit. From what I'm familiar with, AFRICOM, part of the goal was to increase the military. And first, let me just full disclosure: I'm a veteran. I served 6 years in the military.
Okay.
Worked in headquarters my last year in the service, and part of the goal of AFRICOM was to increase the military presence in Africa, U.S. military presence in Africa, to gain access to, of course, the raw materials and natural resources, and to lessen America's dependency on, of course, Middle Eastern oil.
And actually, it was not. If you go back and look at the Wolfowitz doctrine, right? Okay, and go back and look at the PNAC document, right? Is to prevent the rise of China. That's the whole
Well, yeah, but I mean, in part, they have an issue with the rise of China, but also part of the issue is to lessen their dependence on, of course, Middle Eastern oil. But the other issue is America's foreign policy has always been imperialism.
Of course.
And the military has been the muscle. So them being there isn't to benefit and develop the actual African economy, right? Part of the role is to simply extract those resources. In fact, we found that, and what's going on in Sahel right now with that Marine general, where he was making a number of false claims about what Ibrahim Traore was doing with the gold reserves. So I'm just saying, if you just be honest, and this is something that Kwame Ture talked about, and I can say this from someone who was in the military before I became politically astute, is there's never going to be, in my opinion, military action that takes place on the continent that is going to be for the actual benefit of African people.
The thing is, they'll do it if it serves their purpose.
But what I'm saying is, we know historically, General Langley was his name. It doesn't serve African purpose. It actually undermines African sovereignty and self-determination.
Neither did investing in China. Okay.
Right, and so the goal, and I would argue the goal is what, so for African nations to be independent, right? This is why Kwame Nkrumah, shout out to the
Mm-hmm.
the OG, he said in our
Mm-hmm.
goal, we look neither east or west, we move forward.
Okay. I'll give you one book, okay? And I actually got paid a few times by doing this for the DOD, as a matter of fact. But this analysis, it's called Tragedy and Hope by Carol Quigley. Read the first 10 chapters, okay?
What's
Actually
the name
outline
of the book?
Tragedy and Hope by Carol Quigley.
Tragedy and Hope.
He was actually paid by the Council of Foreign Relations to actually identify civilizations and how they operate, okay? And if you go back, remember George Bush in Senior in the New World Order after the end of the Cold War, okay? That's code. That's code, okay? Because the PNAC document existed well before the Sahel. Because I was actually doing the research in real time when this stuff was actually going on, okay?
Mhm.
And we knew exactly why they wanted the Sahel, why they wanted AFRICOM in there, why they wanted that region of the country, that region of the continent. Okay, that specific region is because they wanted to make sure that there was no connection with the Middle East, the greater Middle East, to keep China from doing exactly what they're doing right now.
Yeah, it's just a proxy war.
Huh?
Yeah, it's a proxy war.
It's
Afro dies, but turn your camera on and cue so that I can make sure you're not trolling. And then, of course, I will bring you into the live. Okay, very good. I will bring you in.
which is according to civilization, according to that book, is the reason that China didn't want to start developing the continent, for the same reason, because you're going to put them on the path on the same path to do exactly what they did, because that's how civilizations rotate. Okay,
I would argue that that's how superpowers.
No. So all civilizations rotate the exactly same way. Quigley actually, the reason they pay Quigley is because he has a book called The Evolution of Civilization. Right? There's a very staged process and pattern how civilizations actually come into being, how they actually acquire power, and actually how they die. Okay, Europe and Europe and the United States are in the death spiral right now. Okay, which they were trying to prevent. Okay, in '91 they were trying to prevent the death spiral or the end of the West. Okay, that's why they attacked Iraq and did all this kind of crap. Okay, and Quigley told them in '68. Okay, do not let China in. Do not. I know you guys, you want to break up the Soviet Union and China, but don't let them in. Don't let them in. Put them on the path, and they did it anyway. And Quigley said in '76 the West is finished. In '76, and they've been arguing against it ever since. But the thing is, everything that Quigley said is happening right now as we speak. In fact, your generals and all these other people are actually admitting it. Your economists, your generals are all saying the exact same thing. We try to say that it wasn't true, but guess what? Same patterns it still exists, and Africa is part of the same pattern, which is why they actually didn't want to develop the continent. But they had to, is because it would shut their progress down if they didn't.
Absolutely. Afro Diaspora News, what say you?
Peace, and thanks for having me up. Um, Actually, BGS, he made a couple of good points, actually. And the only thing that I disagree with, I'm
Uh-huh.
not sure, and I could be wrong about this, I'm not sure if the West, when I say the West, I'm talking about the US, Canada, Europe, etc. I'm not sure if the West is on the down spiral, or, in my estimation, what I think it is that the immigrant groups that have migrated to these Western nations actually are the ones that will take the power in these Western nations. I think that is more likely than the West completely just down spiraling and losing power. I think they are relinquishing that power to the immigrants that are coming to these Western nations.
Europe, because like I said, there's one thing. Lumumba talk to Dr. T. I do this every day. Okay, I talk to people in the UN every day. Okay, Europe is cooked. Europe is cooked. They have no money, have no energy, they have no power. Okay, Toure and the Russians just kicked Europe completely out of the continent. Why do you think Toure can do what he does? You're muted.
out of
No,
these
I mean,
inherited.
actually, that's a good point. You know, it's not a hill I'll die on. If these European nations lose power, I'll never lose sleep over it. But in my
Right.
estimation, my bad,
They're,
go ahead.
okay. Give me like 30 seconds. Okay. EU sits on a three-legged stool, right? Okay. France with the resources, the UK with the banking, and Germany with industry, right? Three-legged stool. Okay. Germany got cooked when they shut off the Russian gas. Okay. Why do you think Volkswagen laid off 200,000 people in a semi-socialist country like Germany? Okay. Why do you think UK is going through money problems? Okay, and as far as resources, France just got kicked out of the continent. They can't get that money. In fact, what's his name? Been on a tour trying to trying to buy his way back in. He went to Ghana. He went to Nigeria.
Macron.
He went to Kenya to try to buy his way back in.
Macron.
Macron, yeah. He just went in. He just went and tried to buy his way back in, and they chased him out. Okay, now all the stuff that you did to us, guess what? We don't want to hear from you. Okay, now that you need us. But Traore, you know, we'll have to talk about this another time, Dr. Maluma. I don't want to take up all the.
No problem.
Okay.
Let me run this past y'all real quick. You know, we got a slew of problems. Bring it back to the American Africans right here. And I've been thinking about this over the years. What is our best plan? After living in Africa, there's no way we could all go there. Now, I've been in some meetings with some people where they're trying to set aside land for all of the diaspora to come back. I've actually been in there, and there's been government people in there where they're actually trying to get some land for it. Not just us, but everybody, Brazil. And so that is a good thing. But my belief now is where I've come to is integration has failed, and we need to just forget about that. And my premise is we need to go for land, and we need to be fully in control of it. I'm not talking about autonomy, but I'm talking about something similar to what like the Navajo have. Just Black people need to be over to administer it, and we need to do it sooner than later, because if the lights go out and the country does fall apart, we are going to be in the worst position, and we're going to be hunted down by these other groups, not just white people as well. So
who's going to give you the land?
Well, we have to go to the American government for it.
Who's going to give you the land again?
The American government.
The American policy is to integrate you, man. Just like the American Indian. Yes.
Is it, or does it to subjugate us?
No, integrate you. Why do you think they let you go to the schools and breaking up your neighborhood, stuff like that?
Well, I would say this.
I would argue for us to be integrated, we'd have to be equal, though.
Well, hold on, very quick, logical, Black and BGS. I'm going to speak to this point, then I'm going to let you all go back into debating or discussing, because we're having a great conversation. Malcolm X, in the charter to this Organization of African American Unity, it was written a week before he was assassinated with the help of Dr. John Henry Clark. Malcolm X stated that after careful review, the process, matter of fact, let me see if I can bring it up. I might even have the charter still saved on my computer. Let's see, Malcolm X Organization of African American Unity. Yep, I do have it. Give me 1 second. I'm going to bring it up and I'm going to share my screen. And he talks about this process of integration. Mm-hmm. We must correct it. Boom. Come on. Let me get to it. Okay, here we go. Give me 1 second. I'm going to share my screen. And he talks about this.
Okay.
He states, this is the charter to the Organization of African American Unity. And he states, we have observed that the usage of the term integration was designed and promoted by those persons who expect to continue a nicer type of ethnic discrimination and who intend to maintain social and economic control over all human contacts by means of imagery, classification, quotas, and manipulations based on color, national origin, or racial background and characteristics. Careful evaluation of recent experiences show that that integration actually describes the process by which a white society remains set and in position to use, whenever it chooses to use and however it chooses to use, the best talents of non-white people. This power web continues to build a society in wherein the best contributions of Afro-Americans, in fact of all non-white people, will continue to be absorbed without note or exploited to benefit a fortunate few, while the masses of both white and non-white people remain unequal and unbenefited.
Okay.
This is an excerpt from, of course, the charter to the Organization of African American Unity.
Mm-hmm. 60 years later.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll ask you this. Why do you think they're moving Latinos into Black neighborhoods?
That's going to be our buffer class.
No,
Yeah,
that's your that is your fusion class, okay, to assimilate you.
I'm sorry, I'm not following.
And in other words, you because my son is actually married to a Latina, okay. They're in the neighborhood. They go to your schools. They come up with you, and so the black boys and the black kids start marrying what Latinas. Okay, start fusing into one of this big conglomeration. Okay, that's why they put them in your neighborhood, not to separate you, to assimilate you. The same reason
But I think it's best we
say
at least
what?
have to address his question, brother.
So what?
I can actually respond to what the brother asked. He was speaking about, and I never want to dismiss what he said because it's actually a great idea. He was speaking about Black Americans having something comparable to these Native American reservations. And I won't be long-winded. Professionally, as a lobbyist, I actually advocated for autonomous sovereign land trusts specifically for descendants of U.S. chattel slaves. Now, as you
Mm-hmm.
can see, that has not happened. So to answer the brother's question, what will be the future of Black America? I think we're already seeing it. The masses of Black Americans will live in communities that are continuously gentrified, where they will no longer be the majority in these particular communities that they live in. And
Mm-hmm.
those of us that are Black American that feel compelled to and are able to, we have left the U.S. We're splintering to the Caribbean and into Africa and even Southeast Asia. I think that's the future of Black America, leaving the U.S. and building Black American communities outside of the U.S. And those of us that stay in the U.S. will be minorities, even in our own communities where we used to be the majority.
Okay. Look up Eisenhower's termination project for Native Americans in 1950. That's your future. They're
Break
gonna
that
force.
down.
Actually,
They're
we
gonna
might even be in a worse position.
hold on. Okay,
Go ahead.
okay. I say look it up. Okay, they're forcing you to actually assimilate into the collective. Okay, that's what they're trying to do. They don't want to deport you because they really can't. Okay, they actually don't want to do what Germany and what they're trying to do in Gaza. Okay, what they're trying to do is assimilate you because
Yeah.
that is the culture thing to do.
And
Let me
BGS, one sentence, and I'll pass the mic.
go ahead.
The reason I say that we may be even in a worse position than the Native Americans, because at least the Native Americans have these reservations where they can preserve a degree of their culture, even on a minimal level. Us, we don't even have that. So when our numbers decrease and decrease and decrease and decrease, we don't even have our own territory where we can actually preserve our numbers or our culture in the U.S.
How many Native Americans are actually left?
Five
Shit,
million.
most
Five
of them
million.
mixed, but it's less than 3 million from what I've
There's
seen.
less than a million.
I've seen three, but if you say one, I'll take your answer.
In other words, when Americans got here, it was like 100 million Native Americans. How many are there now?
Well, I told you my number, but we could go with 1 million.
Oh, we can go to three. Okay, you're 40 million. You're 40 million. The only reason they didn't assimilate you or kick you out like Lincoln actually wanted to deport all of y'all. Okay.
Mhm.
We are, yeah, we're aware of that.
Yeah, he wanted that's which is probably why he was actually assassinated. Is because 75% of the GDP came off the back of black slaves. Okay, they couldn't afford to actually deport you. But guess when they started to assimilate you, or started integrate you? Okay, when they didn't need you on the farm no more. It's all about money. If you like I said, this old thing. What did he say?
Well, very quickly, integration, when it began to be promoted through public policy or media,
Mhm.
there were a number of variables. One of the variables was the Cold War and the fact that it was a bad look for America seeking to what America's business interests abroad for nations of color, newly independent nations of color, to see images of course, political repression, social degradation of course, black people in America. So there were a number of variables at play, and I'm actually citing the work of Dr. David Bell, one of the, progenitor of course, critical race theory. There was actually cables that were, of course, we were able to get access to due to the Freedom of Information Act. There's also stated global politics played a role as well. And
it did, but it did, but that wasn't the main. Or that wasn't the main thing. Okay, my mother, who was a sharecropper, because she's silent generation. She's almost 90 years old, right? And she told me the reason they moved to the city instead of being on the sharecropping farm is because they didn't have any more work for them. And don't work for these people. Where you gonna put them?
Well, I mean, but hold on now, because part of the history was Black people would leave. We had the first and second Great Migrations, in part because Black people realized that sharecropping was a rigged game and was trying to get out of it, right? And of course, the Chicago Defender was a big advocate. Matter of fact, you were caught reading Chicago Defender in the Deep South, particularly in places like Hattiesburg. There's a great book on the history of Hattiesburg that talks about that issue. So it wasn't just because, well, white people had an issue with this. There was Black people leaving because they didn't want to be in a rigged game financially, where they were working all year and didn't have enough money to even pay off the debts that were being grandfathered in.
Okay, what do you do with a group of people, when the machines come in and there's no more work for them? Where do you put them?
Well, that's why I wanted to address that earlier, respectfully. When you say the term integration, actually, that's a euphemism for.
It's really
Allow me to
assimilation.
complete the sentence, brother,
Okay.
please.
Okay.
When you use the term integration, that's actually a euphemism for breeding you out. Because when you say integration, that implies that you will still exist after you're integrated. But no, brother. That's why they put Planned Parenthoods in our communities, because their goal is actually to eradicate us, not just integrate us, brother.
Well, and if I can speak to that very quickly, this is something that we've seen in Latin America, particularly in Brazil. We know Brazil has the largest population of African people in any country outside the African continent. And there was actual governmental policy known as bloqueamento, where they were trying to
breed them out.
Promote miscegenation as a way of breeding out the African identity, the
Exactly.
African presence in the country.
What happened to the Native Americans and the Indian schools? They're bred out. They're still assimilated into the collective. They're bred out.
They are bred out. But you know what, BGS? The one thing that we did that the natives never did, they never unified. I mean, I've heard arguments with these people still arguing, Seminoles and Creek arguing about some shit that happened 200 years ago.
Okay.
That's one thing we did do, is unify, and then we increased our numbers.
That's part of it.
Yeah, well, very quickly.
You're economically valuable.
Very quickly, BGS. One of the major issues regarding, of course, the genocide of Native Americans is they just didn't have an immunity to the diseases of the European diseases. We'll be honest there. Another issue, Dr. Milana Karinga talks about this, is that he talks about the adaptive vitality of the African. And he simply states, they can't kill blood. And what we tend to find historically is that we are able to adjust to changing circumstances without losing our substance in essence. But the major issue, particularly with Native Americans, was, and I would just argue, respectfully in terms of the historical accuracy, is they didn't have an immunity to, of course, the diseases that Europeans brought to the New World.
Okay, let me run two things real quick here about the integration thing. I don't know how much we can integrate because we're Black. One thing, when I was in Southern, I've been Namibia, South Africa, Botswana, I was around the whites and I was looking at them and I was like, they got blonde hair and blue eyes, but they're a little dark. Even the ones who are like white, they're like a little Mariah Carey skin tone. So for us to integrate, they would no longer be white or as white. So I think that what they're trying to do is make a larger buffer class. That's why you see all this stuff with the Black woman. It's 1,200 and she's got a white knight. You know what I mean? All the knights at the round table got Black wives. Like this stuff that never happened, but they're trying to push that. So I think what they're looking for is for a major buffer class. So that's one. And there'll always be Black people, but they're going to do the one thing that the white man messed up on. He didn't make a colored class like in South Africa. He put all the mulattoes in the field with us. That was one of his biggest mistakes there. So that's what I think about that, is he's trying to make a buffer class. But two, back to the land. What is the best thing for us to do right now? I mean, we could talk about education, doing this, doing that, but I still go back to the land. I'm back to square one. Is we need land and we have to run it ourselves. We have to administer ourselves. And the good thing about it, it will be very, very hard. It will be the hardest thing we've ever done.
I'm glad you brought that up.
Anybody out that we don't want. So we can handle them ourselves.
You're going to try to separate yourself in the most militaristic.
No, I'm not saying that. No. I'm just saying something that we administer. I would have Europeans, Germans, people come to the casino on our land. Come on over here and spend some money. Now a lot of white people might be pissed about it. A lot of white people might be like, hey, I am not talking about autonomy. The only way we would go with autonomy is if the lights go out and the country falls apart. Okay.
And that was the treaty that white people signed with the Native Americans. Okay, how are you gonna get them to do it?
Well, we actually have, besides the 40 acres, we have treaties and other stuff where they were.
Oklahoma was designated as Native American and Black land. Guess what happened to it?
They took it, yeah.
They took it.
That's why I wanted to answer his question about what's best.
But yeah, we're back to what is best. Don't
okay, go ahead.
About the all-powerful white man for just a second. Just say what is best for us to do.
Okay. The thing is, what will actually promote him, actually give you something, or actually get in partnership with you? Okay, since he has the power and you don't. You don't have the money, you don't have the power, you don't have the guns. Okay, how you get in partnership with these people? Okay, what are they more afraid of than you? And how can you help them, buffer them against what they're afraid of? How can you fill that gap?
Well, a lot of it's not always about the power thing. Sometimes it is a negotiation thing. Even Jared Taylor is the one who said this: give blacks their own land. I mean, some of them would rather have you be over there than around them.
Okay.
But you can't negotiate this stuff.
Hold on, but respectfully, we're ignoring the elephant in the room.
Hold on. Let me respond. You asked me a question. Okay, hold on. Okay,
you asked us, but go ahead, brother.
You said give. Okay, they have to give you something. Why should they give you something?
I mean, we're asking for reparations, ain't we?
Why should they give you something?
You said what?
Why? Yes.
Wait, is it under legal document that we were supposed to have land?
Yeah.
No, but the point is we don't have the leverage.
I'm not saying that they're going to do it.
We don't have the leverage, bro.
That's
why I said we can cut to the chase. That's the point I was about to make.
You don't have leverage. Yeah.
And this is the point I was about to make. If we don't successfully advocate to ban abortion so that we can actually get our numbers up, we will always be a permanent minority underclass because we don't have the leverage. We don't have the demographics. Really. So everything that we're speaking about, at the end of the day, it will be someone else. When I say someone else, I'm talking about the groups that outnumber us. They will be the ones that will be able to say yay or nay ultimately. They will be the ones that will be able to push the button. Not us, because we don't got the numbers.
I mean, how are you actually going to ban abortion? Like, say, banning abortion? How are you going to do that?
Well, and I'm glad you asked me. I could just say what I did personally, and I'm glad you asked that. Now,
okay.
I told you all. Well, brother, I'm trying to answer your question. It'll be 1 second.
I said okay.
So, professionally, I worked as a lobbyist. I'm one of the people, not the only person, but I'm one of the people that contacted the Supreme Court, particularly Clarence Thomas. We call him a coon, but I'm one of the anti-abortion activists that got Roe versus Wade overturned on the federal level. Now it's in the state's hands. Now, each particular state, no matter what state you live in, if abortion is legal in your state, you must advocate for legislation to ban it, brother. If not, like I say, our sisters, unfortunately, they have already committed genocide against millions of our own babies. Really. We would at least be double in population if it wasn't for abortion alone. So until we deal with that elephant in the room, everything we're talking about, we depending on someone else to do for us.
Why is the state and the states trying to ban abortion? Okay, it's because white numbers are going down. It had nothing to do with you.
I agree. That's my point. Our numbers are going down too, not just the whites. Do you realize that?
So in other words, okay, one hand washing the other. Actually, we're leveraging what they want anyway, right?
Exactly. It benefits us. It's mutually beneficial.
It's mutually beneficial. Same thing with reparations. It has to be what? Mutually what? Beneficial.
Of course.
That's how you don't get the money. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yes, but I think you're missing the point is that at the end of the day, since we are outnumbered by other demographics, namely the whites and the Hispanics, since we don't outnumber them, we are depending on them to support our reparations initiative. Do you realize that, brother?
Okay, I do. Okay, I do realize. Man, I've been in this game 40 years. Okay, how do you actually get them to do it?
Well, I literally just told you. I said we have to. I'm trying to answer it, and I said it one last time. And if you missed it, you missed it. What I'm saying is we have to increase our numbers so that we can increase our representation in Congress and Senate and the Supreme Court and even in the White House so that we could create the reparations legislation ourselves. Until then, we're waiting on the white man to do something for us that he has never done.
The thing is, I gave you a way to get it. Okay, I gave you a way to get it to
Has it
help
worked,
you.
brother?
Huh?
Has
Okay,
what you said worked?
it hasn't even been tried.
Talking about the sovereign wealth.
The sovereign wealth fund, yes.
But we would need land for sovereign wealth, correct?
No, you don't need land for sovereign. You got land. Where's it located?
Where? Nowhere. Where?
Africa.
No, we do not have land in Africa. Where? Please don't say Liberia.
You actually, Liberia is your land.
Come on, no.
It was Liberia was bought for you back in 17.
I can't go to Liberia right now.
Yes, you can. Yes, you sure you can. Yes, you can.
Hold on, BGS. The point is, we're not citizens of Liberia. They don't even have a citizenship by descent program for us in Liberia, brother.
They took it. Liberia took it out in 2001. Okay.
All right, so that's the point.
Okay, I do this for a living, man. Okay. You go to Liberia, make your claim in a year, you have citizenship. Okay, in a year.
Then the money would have to go to them,
brother. That's not even true. Hold on.
It is
correct
true.
What you just said. Let me correct what you just said,
okay.
Brother. I know actual Liberians. That's not even American Liberian. I know Liberians from particular tribes in Liberia that have moved from Maryland back to Liberia, and they not even citizens of Liberia yet, brother.
It is because guess what Liberia did under that statute? No dual citizenship.
Exactly, brother.
They cut it out.
Do you hear what you're saying?
Did you hear what I said?
So that's the point. It's not
no.
Will work,
I know a whole bunch of people that have done the exact same thing. Most people don't want to go to Liberia. That's the problem.
We didn't want to go to Liberia in the beginning.
We don't want to go to Liberia.
It's not even just that. Even if they go to Liberia, an American citizen is not trying to relinquish their U.S. citizenship.
You have to.
All right, so that's the point. And I think you're missing it.
All right. You're not listening to me.
We can argue over that. Let me back up because I think we got too many steps ahead. Let me ask you
real quick, one mic. You can have dual citizenship in several African nations and not relinquish your U.S.
We're not in Liberia. Liberia ended that. We're talking about Liberians specifically. Okay.
Let me ask you this before we say either there. You might say Liberia. I say we need our own land here. Are we capable? Two questions. Are we capable of running our own land? And have we made a push for it yet? We haven't made a full push the way we're pushing for reparations. Can we develop our own land, a town, a city, and can we administer? Are we capable of that? You would agree?
Yes.
Okay, because that's step one. Before
it's called Atlanta.
Yeah, I live in Atlanta, bro.
And who runs Atlanta, man?
We don't own it, but yeah, we
who runs it? Who runs Atlanta?
There's a lot of mess in Atlanta, bro.
There's mess in New York and Washington D.C. and Los Angeles. Who runs Atlanta?
Yeah, I would say that our full administration, like on our sovereign land or whatever, in wherever we had it in America, I think we could. It might not be as developed. It wouldn't be as developed as Atlanta, but it would be safer, and it would be far more administered. Because we could reward people and we could discipline people. If you're 50 years old, let me give you a little house. Y'all ain't got nothing. Because I live in Atlanta, brother. There's homeless black people everywhere. It kills my soul. And we got to do something with them. It's real.
I live in the biggest population of homeless people in the United States called Los Angeles. Okay, white people are out there too. But the thing is, that's a whole different. That's a societal problem. Okay, that could be fixed. Because you just spent $200 billion in what? In Iran. Could have housed everybody. But that's a societal problem.
They don't even care about their own white people, man.
That's a societal problem.
Logical Black, you asked a great question that we sped past earlier, and I actually had an answer to you. I had a response. You said, what is best? In my estimation, and I can only tell y'all what I did, brother, I still own real estate in the U.S. and Maryland and New York, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I moved myself and my family to the Caribbean. You have over 34 majority black nations in the Caribbean. You can move down there. A lot of them already speak English. You could just get in where you fit in. And when you come down here with your, and I'm gonna just say this in closing. When you come down here with your U.S. dollar, you're going to live like royalty. If you don't like the Caribbean, look at West Africa or Sub-Saharan Africa or Southeast Asia. Really. That's my advice, respectfully.
I would say Namibia and Botswana. That's where I'm probably going to retire at. I think we should work on a right of abode. So when we get to a certain age, because it's far cheaper to go live in the Caribbean or Africa and that. But we got to remember, diaspora, we ain't like Jamaica with 2-3 million people. We got 50 million people, possibly more.
Hey,
So
I agree.
let me ask you a question. Logical black. Let me ask you a question, right? If African Americans had a $6 trillion sovereign wealth fund, how open would they actually be willing to actually give you the right of abode? How open would they actually be to that?
You mean Africans? If you know what the thing is, what I've seen is they don't want us coming there in numbers because we would take over the government. So citizenship is off. But a right of abode, I think that's even without the money. I think we can
if you come in with $6 trillion and we can actually revolutionize your whole society, how open would they actually be to that?
They would be open to it, but wait, back up a second, BJ.
He's speeding past the point that you're making.
I'm making the point.
Let me go up to BGS then. I'm gonna go up to BGS.
I'm asking a direct question. Okay, he understands what I'm saying.
They would be there. They would be open to it then, and I believe they're open to it right now, even without it. But boy, back up. How many of us want to go to Africa?
The thing is, if you want to make money, okay. And say if you want to make money and get a business and get start your own thing popping, that's where you got to go. That's where you start.
Logical Black, you actually brought up a great point about. Let me salute everyone on the panel. Very intelligent brothers. Logical Black, you made a very good point about us being approximately. I think we're more than 50 million strong, but we'll say 50 million strong. So a lot of us, most likely, we're not going to flood to the same nations. And that's why initially the point I made is we're going to most likely, as we're already doing, you're going to see African Americans splintering into various different nations in the Caribbean, Africa, and Southeast Asia, because that's already happening. Even if you look at, I don't know how y'all feel about the Passport Brothers movement, but you could just use that as a case study. Just look at the nations that they're going to. So they're indicating where African Americans are actively interested in going and actually going to. So that's really what I see happening.
Anyway,
very quickly, Afro diaspora news. I'm a passport bro. My wife is Ghanaian. Okay. So, just put that out there.
Exactly, yes, sir. That's my point. Literally, that's my point. And not to be all in your business. Are you in Ghana?
Oh, I'm here in Ohio right now.
Did you bring her back, brother? Did you bring her back, Lumumba? Is she here?
Well, that was the plan, but we can't. Trump. So, because we got married in January in Ghana. And then once I got back, we was like, okay, even before I left, we got married, but we made sure we actually legally were married, marriage certificate, everything. So like, all right, cool. We fill out the paperwork. We filed to have the spousal visa. Once I got back, like 3 days after I got back, she sent me a message. It was like, hey, did you see this in the news? I'm like, what are you talking about? Trump canceled all visas from the African continent.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's temporary.
Yeah, so it's temporary, but I'm like, damn, I'm a newlywed and I ain't got my, but these are some of the issues, of course. But I'm buying the passport.
Because I talked to these people, they did not want the Chinese coming in like that. They really didn't. Okay, why did they do it? It's because Chinese had money. Chinese spent $1 trillion developing the continent, over $1 trillion now. Okay, they came in with money. If we had come in with that kind of money, we could have done the exact same thing. They'd have welcomed us, and we black. They actually really wanted us. You come in with money and skills, they'll welcome you.
They will. I've been there. I'm headed back to Southern Africa probably in a month or two. Very well welcome. I get skills, but what are we going to do? The dominant of our people, brother, there's too many of us, and we got to do something for them here, and we got to prove a real point to us and to everybody else. We got to build our own shit.
Yeah, what you have to.
Let me speak to that, because you were talking about land and so the Nation of Islam, and I'm a very strong critic of the Nation of Islam. I actually did a 3-part series on my platform. You all should check it out. Titled "Inside the Nation of Islam: Cultural Community." Actually, was interviewed former members of the Nation of Islam. So one thing that the Nation of Islam advocates is separation, right? The Nation of Islam has been around since I think June or July of 1930, And so I said, well, here's the issue. The rhetoric sounds good, but the plan hasn't been implemented. And I gave an example of Mormons. So many people are familiar with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, also known as Mormons. I think there was a schism, if I remember correctly, in the Mormon Church due to them outlawing, I think, polygamy, or what most people know publicly as sister wives, right? What ended up taking place as a result was there were individuals who left the greater Salt Lake City area. I've been to Salt Lake City, by the way. And yes, at the Delta Center, their Wi-Fi code is Jordan pushed off. Literally, that's the actual password. But they moved to southern Utah and northern Arizona and created autonomous municipalities, right? They settle, they get a lawyer, they file the paperwork to incorporate as a municipality with the local county. They set up the infrastructure, and now they're in charge of their own little town or municipality. So that is something that can be done.
You mean on your own or under actual government approval?
Well,
I think that's.
It's got to be approved.
But of course, you may have to go through legally. You have to have an attorney to follow the paperwork properly, so on and so forth. But the thing is, when you develop a municipality, and I'm saying this because I have a master's degree in public administration, and you're an actual municipality in a particular county, then you're going to receive actual state, county, and federal money to run that municipality.
But you're still under the aegis of the United States, though.
Right. Of course, absolutely.
And even what I'm talking about, we'd still be under federal law, but I'm saying we'd be excluded to state law. So on our land, maybe we do go for multiple wives there. That's a whole other conversation. But I'm just saying, but we would have to.
You can't. Even in Utah, they can't do that out loud, man. I'm
gonna do a show on it. I'm gonna do a show on.
That's a whole other show. Yeah.
Hold on, very quickly. So I got someone in the comments making anti-Black bigoted comments. I stated at the top of the show, this is a place of Black empowerment. We believe in the 3 N's of Black power: self-respect, self-defense, and self-determination. So you're going to be banned from the show, right? We don't do that here. We got some brilliant brothers on right now, and we're having some great conversations about issues that are critical to our community. If you want to come in with that nonsense, you could exit stage left. So go right ahead. I think I cut off Logical Black, but I'll try to do a show this week on, is polygamy the answer to the Black relationship problem?
Yeah, that's a whole thing. But that dude who just showed up there hating, that's a real issue that we have. We have a lot of what we call house Negroes that try to just throw a monkey wrench in this thing. We're Black men up here, and we're talking about taking care of ourselves, doing for ourselves, building for ourselves. And we got what was maybe a Black man coming up here getting in the way. We got a lot of issues, and we got a lot of effeminate mindsets that we got to deal with. And that's why we got to go and do this thing ourselves. It will be hard. I'm not saying it will be hard. It will be tough. It's hard to do. And the worst thing is we got to try to get our people on code to do it. But would it be a good thing?
How do you get, and that's the whole reason about the Black Manosphere and what Dr. Lamont was talking about, getting the women on code. We
got to get the men on code before we get the women.
I wish that was the case.
Both at the same time.
I wish that was the case. I wish that was the case. Okay.
Hold on real quick. One mic. BGS, I want you to finish your thought because I want to hear what you have to say.
I wish that was the case. Who runs the Black community, man? Really?
The
women do. Yeah.
Very quickly, there's a book titled The Urban Plantation by Dr. Robert Staples. He talks about that.
Yeah, Staples, yeah.
There are only two institutions in the Black community that operate independent of the white power structure: the church and the household. Women make up over 80% of the parishioners at these religious institutions, and in the home, women are the ones who we could call the head of state. So
they are. So without getting them on code, what we do is not going to work. We tried that already. Even down to civil rights. How do you think white women got civil rights? Okay, it wasn't us. Black men did not volunteer to give white women civil rights and affirmative action and that kind of stuff. Okay, we didn't. Who did?
Yeah, that's the feminism.
And a Black woman was the head of it. Okay, look up Pauli Murray and Eleanor Roosevelt. In fact, I played the whole thing where she actually, I have a short on my channel where she actually said it.
Mm.
They're actually going to give civil rights to white women. She actually said it. So we have to get our women on code. When what's the name was actually running for president, guess what Obama did? Did he go chastise the women? He chastised us. Brothers got to get on code.
Exactly, yeah, absolutely. And Dr. T.S.I. Johnson did a great show on that very issue. That this is part of who we go. Yeah.
It almost cost Dr. Neal his job with the ice cube effect. That was his. Okay, almost cost him his job.
Dr. Tyson?
Dr. Neal, Dr. Ronald Neal. Okay, he came up with the ice cube effect, and he almost lost his job at Wake Forest because of that.
Let me say this.
What is the ice cube effect?
And in other words, remember the ice cube in
Cocktails
with Queens, Cocktails with Queens. Dr. Neal said we need black male political independence. Okay. And they started that spread into what we call the ice cube effect, which happened with Stacey Abrams and governor, and also here in Los Angeles with the mayor. Okay.
That's a great point, because Dr. T.S.I. Johnson did a show. He talks about black men were always a scapegoat, not just in terms of political issues and voting and who gets elected, but historically we've always been a scapegoat for whatever ills are in society. And he says this is something that's very interesting that we tend to find, where black women have picked up on this messaging. They realize this is the way American society works, and they jump on it as well. And so, one of the things that Dr. T.S.I. Johnson said it was, these arguments are being made, even though black men, the data shows, are the most progressive voters in the country.
They are.
For women and LGBTQ candidates and candidates of color at a higher demographic than any group of men in the country.
Yeah.
But we're still being castigated and scapegoated as a problem politically.
Yeah. So in other words, I wish black men had the power and had the agency to change this black society, but we don't. Okay. We can't get our black women on code to actually wield the power that they have to actually change this. There's no reason 10% of your black boys can't read a grading level. Okay.
Yeah.
80, 90% can't read a grade level. There's no reason for that.
Absolutely.
You know what?
There's no reason.
Very quickly, family, you all are watching the MumbaSpeaks.com, a Black Empowerment Initiative, where we believe we could gain a competitive advantage by always betting on Black in conjunction with Bequaline Network, the Pan-African social media extraordinaire, and the home of African-centered news and information. If you're watching, make sure you hit the subscribe and like button. Thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. Hit that notification bell and make sure that you donate. Go right ahead,
and hit the hype button, okay, to spread. There's, we're trying to get all the PhDs in and try to. I don't believe in poor black teachers. Okay, we're trying to get our scholars in and get them a following and get them paid. Okay, with our YouTube money. Okay, because they're bringing in information. I don't believe in poor righteous teachers. Okay, I don't. Hit that hype button. Okay, hit that cash app. Hit the hype button. Hit that super chat. Okay, support this brother.
Let me respond to that. Let me start with the latter first. Again, it goes back to building something, our own land, our own beautiful city, and then it's going to make repercussions not just in our own community but all around the world. And that's something of leverage. Hey, the Negroes are saying that they'll break off and go their own way if we keep having problems. I didn't say do that, but it's a tactical move on several fronts. But to part one, I don't believe that we can get the black woman on code or with us on the plantation. So what is the solution for us? One, don't make any kids. And two, do what Professor Lumumba does. There is a whole continent of 1 billion beautiful black women, and they're soft. After being in Africa under them women and the way them women treated me, I'll never take none of this BS that I sat there and watched my father take. That'll never happen again. So I think the answer to that is we got to open the door to other wives. And I don't recommend Asian wives because that's another race and we're not, you know what I mean? A lot of people are going to Thailand. I say it's Africa and we need to open the door to getting wives there.
It will help, but it's not going to solve the problem.
Brother, not an ethno state. I would just say that we have
solution, BGS.
Huh?
What do you think is the solution? If passport, getting marrying sisters from other countries it isn't the solution to having sisters be on code. What is?
In other words, eventually the environment's going to make it's actually going to emphasize that. Okay, that's what we're trying to do. Okay, with technology and AI and stuff like that, you're gonna have a hard time in the next 10 to 15 years. Everybody is, okay. And if sisters don't want to get on code, guess what? We're cooked. We're cooked because there's too many things coming at the country, at the whole society, and black people in particular. Okay, if they can't get on code, we're cooked.
Well, and this is something Dr. T.S. Johnson talks about when he talks about the rise of the black gynocracy. He says part of the issue that
where you think you got the term from?
Right. Okay. From you. Okay.
Good. Yes.
And one of the things that he discusses, and so of course, if Dr. T.S. Johnson is my big bro, then you're Paul for me, right? Mm-hmm. But he talked about this is something that's being subsidized by the state. So there's an economic incentive for them to buy into this. Right?
The thing is, what do black women want? Okay, do they want the thing to continue as it is, or they actually want power and respect and all this kind of stuff they say that they want? What do they want?
I don't believe that they want power and respect. I think they want Mr. Charlie to take care of them, but they also want a husband a black husband that they can boss around and be the alpha.
Then we're cooked.
No, you overgeneralizing, brother.
I'm not all black women.
Be more precise.
Excuse me, all the sisters watch. I know
we're generalizing, man.
Yeah,
we're generalizing today.
Yeah, but it's not true about the majority. I think the majority.
It is the majority. It is the majority.
Well, you don't know what I was about to say because you cut me off, brother.
Okay. What you about to say, man?
What I'm saying is, in my observation, the majority of African American women do not want white men. Matter of fact, statistically, African American women date out the least. So you're wrong about that. Respectfully.
We didn't say about them wanting white men. Okay.
No, I said keep getting benefits. They want
benefits.
They'll even and in my I watched the sister Six the Goddess. She even said it, and that's my girl. I watch her. She even said it.
And they not wrong for
a single mom.
They not wrong for wanting to benefit off their men. That means we got to stand up as men and provide for our women.
But
they won't feel the incentive. So let me complete the sentence. I'll pass the mic. We have to stand up and provide for our women so they won't feel the incentive to go to the white man. Okay. Don't you realize that?
You are correct, and that's why I go back to the land, brother.
One mic. I want to respond directly to that. And this is going to be anecdotal, but I can also speak to my experience in the academy. And this is something, and Dr. T.S. Johnson may have gotten this from you, BGS. He talks about this concept of the husband-son.
Yes.
And I would say this is just anecdotal Afro-diaspora news, and I'm in no way trying to discredit what you stated. But before I got married to a beautiful African woman, I, as a PhD, I would come in contact with black women who were professional, attractive, so on and so forth. I worked on a regular basis, and I've had women tell, you know what, you're too much for me. You're above my level, right? And what I found, and this is something that particularly takes place in the academy, where in secondary education, who typically excels academically? K through 12.
The women. Exactly.
So what happens is that it develops a level of air of superiority over their racial male counterparts, black male counterparts. So then what happens is when they go to college, they're doing better because they've had the educational scaffolding. So then when they meet a black man who can challenge them intellectually, right, they develop a visceral emotional reaction. So this is where the husband-son practice comes in, right? Where what happens is they will purposely seek out relationships with men who are not on their level educationally, socioeconomically, intellectually, etc., so they can wear the pants in the relationship. This is a real issue. Dr. T.S. Johnson have talked about this, but this is something I've even witnessed where and mind you, I'm 6 foot, 230 pounds. I'm chiseled like a rock. I bench press almost 400, squat 500. I look like him, not them. Educated, PhD, whole nine, right? Have a career in the academy, and they be like, nah, because they know what's coming with that is accountability. It's and I've had sisters tell me, there was a sister I was talking to when I was in Columbus. She divorced the brother she had 2 kids with, and he was a police officer. And she told me, I said, why did you get a divorce? She said, because I just want to be in a relationship in which I could do whatever I want.
Bingo.
And I remember saying, and this was a sister who wanted to have some, sexual relations with me, right? Conjugal relations. And I literally said, you know what? I'm not interested anymore.
Who are the freest people in America?
Women.
Black women and white men, because they do what they want.
So I get that. I think that is a narrative that's promoted. There aren't enough brothers who are on our level, but that's not true. The viewer, I did an interview with a sister last year on my platform during the summer who made an argument, and this is based on, she wrote an article, Dr. C.S. Johnson did a show on it. Then I reached out to her, interviewed her, but she made an argument in her article, in a book chapter, that there aren't enough black men who make as money as black women. And I said, well, the Bureau of Labor Statistics shows that the claim that you made isn't true. So this is a narrative that brothers aren't on the same level as sisters economically or financially, but the data shows that's completely false.
It is. Yeah, it is false.
And so then what you get is, I'm a parent to Kevin Samuels, right? Where they would say, well, you got to do X, Y, Z in order for me to act right. And that's nothing more than conditional femininity. When you go to the continent, women ain't talking like that. They were raised to be respectful.
They're raised to be what? Wise, right?
To be so respectfully, brother. But I just think that the argument that you're making is adverse to facts. I think if you talk to an older black man, they make the same argument.
I got almost 50,000 subs. Right, I've been doing this online for 20 years. Okay, I've been doing the Black Manosphere since 2014. Man, I talk to thousands of people of all different levels. I'm telling you, I actually my host, I actually run actually co-host a women's pro-black program, okay, with an older woman, older, I call her older gynocrat, that actually counsels women. I know what I'm talking about, right? They said the exact same thing, okay? Well, I came to YouTube because I got tired of hearing it in the pro-black sector, okay? Where women actually were in charge and they will pull your coattail. Dr. Lumen can tell you, they'll pull your shirt sleeve. No, you can't react that way to the sister, okay? I know you're right. I know you're right, but you can't say that to the sister.
I had an experience my first year of my PhD program at Deer House at University where we were having a colloquy between the first and second year cohorts about issues in gender. And there was some white guy who was making some people would argue inappropriate comments to a lot of the women who were in the program. Of course, I was completely oblivious to this because I was going to class, going to work, and going home to my children. Who, of course, my son will be 19 in a couple of weeks and my daughter's 16 now, but they were much younger at the time. And I remember one young lady said, well, I have an issue with Bakari. Like, okay, what is that? She says, he's very masculine and that makes me uncomfortable. Yeah. So what you're arguing when you actually are in community with these individuals, they have a problem with you being masculine, educated, having those leadership characteristics. I'm telling you, they would tell you, because they know what's coming with that is accountability. That's the issue. Yeah. When we talk about, even in terms of family formation, this is something DGS, you've been doing for 20 years. I know you could cook on here. The Dr. C.S. Johnson is the one who put me on, but also my own experience, right? Where women were arbitrarily in the relationship. Why? Because they don't want to share the responsibility of negotiating, decision making when it comes to raising a child.
Yeah. They don't want to give up power. It's always a power struggle.
Absolutely. This is a real issue. And I know this because I'm divorced. I'm married now, but I went through a divorce before, and just arbitrarily out the blue, hey, I don't want to do this anymore.
And this is something that's been passed down since the 1600s when they put black women in charge over the slave children. Okay. So women's BLM said the exact same thing. What is a black family? A woman and her children.
Yeah. Matter of fact, in Dr. C.S. Johnson's book, he talked about this is the Black Lives Matter was the organization, not the movement, but the organization. Let's make that clear. It's the major protest organization in the last 20 years. And while they're making money off the deaths of black men, they're advocating black men not being part of the family.
Part of the family, yeah.
Just very quickly, this is not a situation in which black men are handling their BI. That is a narrative that promotes this concept. It's an example of anti-black masonry that promotes that we are socially incompetent with failed patriarchs. That is not a reality. These things are being done by design. There's a reason why there's an 80% illegitimate rate in our community is because women don't want to be married. They don't want to have a father in the home. They don't, because guess what? A child can't hold the mother accountable for going on to school night and coming home at 3 o'clock in the morning drunk. but the father, the man in the home can.
Yeah. Where did they learn that it's normal to raise children without a father?
The
Slavery.
Holocaust of enslavement.
Slavery. All this stuff has been passed down. I read what happened back then and things were implemented. I read the stuff now. It's the same stuff is still here.
And
We
part of the
haven't addressed it. We haven't addressed it yet.
And part of the issue is some of this takes place because they had the capacity to do this because the laws are inequitable. And this is just something that's taking place in a Black community. We'll find I used to go back 15 years, 2011. I went to the Montgomery County Fatherhood Initiative because of the issues I was having in gaining access to my children. I show up, and of course, I'm him, not them. They asked me, they offered me a part-time job to be a facilitator. Cool. You know what? It's going to put some money in my pocket. I'm helping men, particularly predominantly Black men. Cool. What I found was all of these men, white, Jewish, Latino, Asian, Black, are all experiencing the same issue.
Yeah.
Of the woman arbitrarily ended the relationship. It's making up reasons to keep the child from him. Right? And this is something that is very common nowadays.
Yeah.
Very common.
Yeah.
And a lot of this has to do with what? We talk about Western women in general, not just Black women, the proper perspective, but Western women in general, but this tends to be more prevalent in the Black community, are adverse to family, they are averse to structure because they have been raised to have an antithetical view in a relationship with the very thing that people in human history have always wanted.
Yeah, I mean, the patterns are there, and Black women really don't want to get rid of it. They actually like the way things are.
Absolutely. Sister Shy, if you could tap in, I know you're a sister. Shout out to the Columbus at 614. You're in the building. Sister Carrie, if you can tap in as well, would love to get you in here and be part of this conversation. Particularly you, Sister Carrie, because if I remember correctly, you work in social work. You see some of these issues up front and personal on a diurnal basis. Because most people would argue, well, these are just Black men bashing Black women. Absolutely not. We're talking about what we're really talking about here is institutional anti-Black misandry. This is really what we're talking about, right? And we're talking about the how policy plays a role in removing fathers from a functional role in the raising and rearing and socialization of their children. Yes. So once again, the link is in the description. I'm gonna put the link in the chat once more. But
look up Caroline Norton and the custody of infants.
Let me ask you some pushback on that. We know that the Black woman has made several issues. That girl that I told you that was in my master's program, she's single, well-spoken. She got a real good job at a Fortune 500. I think she makes like 200 G's, but we're real cool. I mean, she ain't off the list for me to, wife up. So I'm not saying all Black American women, but she even said Black women are incentivized to be single mothers. And that's the first one I've ever heard to actually admit it. And I told her, you said that in public.
I would give you an example to substantiate that. I remember I was dating a sister when I was at the community college level yet. At the community college, I hadn't even gone to a 4-year institution yet. And there was a scholarship offered to young ladies who were single mothers. And she told me, she's like, it's like they're incentivizing bad behavior. Yeah. And in order to get the scholarship, you had to be a single mother.
So
shout out to Bill Clinton.
Yeah. So, and it was wrong. That is wrong. There are a lot of mistakes, and we gotta address that. But two things. One, we are behind enemy lines, and we have to put some blame on the men of the late 60s and the 70s for not putting a foot down on that and saying, hey, if you go out here and you do this, marriage is over. Because the marriage rate didn't really go down to what, the late 70s, the 80s?
Yeah, it was the under Gen X. It was actually the 80s.
Yeah, that's when it cracked. So at first, it was okay. She got 3 kids. I'm still gonna marry her. So we can't. Them men before, we got to put some blame on them as well that they should have did that. But as for right now, I go back to it. We should fight for free birth control, but whoever's going to take it, I don't know. But I say, just the young men, tell them we got a problem. There's 50% of Black American men that don't have children. That's a real issue. We got to go somewhere and have wives. And I keep saying it's Africa.
Yeah, well, guess what? Most Black men don't want to go.
That's the psyop, though, brother.
They
They try to make it look so terrible, and after being there, man, at Lumumba, you didn't want to leave, right?
I've been trying to convince. We've been trying to convince black men to go to Africa for 30 years, man. If you got a way, please share. Okay.
Very quickly, I'm going to do something. I'm gonna share this picture of my wedding photo, just so y'all know I ain't capping out here. Of course, it's just very proud. But we handling our business. So that this was January of this past year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we were in Kumasi. So for the wedding.
Oh, Kumasi.
All right, brother.
Okay.
Yeah,
all right, very good. Okay. Kumasi's a nice town.
Yeah.
Tell me the process.
Excuse me.
Tell me the process, Lumumba, since we're talking about it. For you meeting the woman, the family, getting everything. Like, how did it go through? Did you pay a dowry?
I did pay a dowry. Yes, I did. But and we talked about this on my show yesterday when we talked about social leashing. If you all are aware, social leashing as a term that I coined that builds on the work of Dr. T. Hassan Johnson, this concept of blue leashing and black leashing. And I argue social leashing is
and
which. And hold on, let me bring this up so you all can actually know what I'm referring to, what I'm talking about by social leashing. And I argue that social leashing is a practice in which a woman will, golly, I gotta try to find this. A woman will, okay, give me 1 second. Come on. Okay, yes, here we go. So I argue social leashing is the act of a woman using social media to make libelous and defamatory comments about a black man to bring harm to his personal, social, and professional reputation.
Mm-hmm.
I vote that social leashing is implemented due to the ineffectiveness of blue leashing and black leashing. Okay. Now, doing that show yesterday, one of the guys said, well, the only reason they wanted to marry you is because you have money. I said, well, that's not the case at all. And he talked about, the hypergamous nature of women. I said, well, in this context, the woman doesn't even get to make the decision. It's up to her family.
Yeah.
Right. And then he said, but you paid a dowry. I said, yes. But I said, why does one pay a dowry when they marry a daughter? Right. The reason why is because in most traditional African contexts or cultures, unless the daughter marries, she stays at home.
Yes.
Doesn't matter if she's 30, 40, 50 years old. And so what you're really paying for is the removal of her labor from the home.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and her education, all that kind of stuff factors into it because they produce a product. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what you're paying for.
Yeah.
And they make sure that she acts right too.
Absolutely. In fact, my wife told me, she says, my father's going to be calling you once I move to the States. And she said part of the reason is to make sure that I'm behaving correctly.
Yes.
She told me this. I was like, what? She was like,
that's what you need, brother.
She told me, she says, if we're still living in Dayton, if you're still living in the same city and town as your parents, I'm going to need to make sure that I go over there once a week and help your parents clean their home.
Yes.
Mind you, this is a woman, you saw the picture, very beautiful. She's a model and she owns her own. She owns her own company where she makes dresses, award-winning dresses. I'm like, what the French toast? I mean, this woman, she's not some, illiterate bumpkin living in the country. This is a woman who has been a judge for the Miss Ghana contest. She's been on television. You know what I'm saying? And I'm like, whoa, because like you said, they're raised to be wives.
Yes. Yeah. They're raised to be wives. A different, completely different, social structure. Yeah.
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 I've never been treated this well in my life. I didn't even know this was possible.
Yeah, well, you come out of gynocracy into a patriarchy, it changes.
Yeah, absolutely. So just give things. And one of the things Dr. T. Hassan Johnson argued, once again, I'm always calling his name out, but he talked about once again black men being shamed. We talk about sign language, shame, insults, guilt, and need to be right. Guess
who else came up with that?
You did.
Yeah. Anyway,
we definitely we have to do some. We're gonna have to do some shows. Hopefully, I could come on your show. If you can send me an email and we can, coordinate.
okay, anytime.
And one of the things, next thing you know, black man we were being called colonizers.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Dr. Johnson said, "Hold on, no one said that about how Southern got a groove back." So it's this practice of anything that a heterosexual black man does is nefarious.
It's because they own you. They don't want runaway slaves.
Yeah,
you belong to them.
Yeah, but part of that, of course, and Dr. Johnson talks about this, and I would agree, is it connects to this overall demonization of black men in Western society.
Mm-hmm.
This concept of the black boogeyman, and of course they jump right on the hook, line, and sinker.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
because they got it from Miss Ann. Miss Ann taught them that. That's why Dr. Curry's book, The Man Not, is so important. He documents all of that.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And I've seen this in the academy where they are almost behold. I mean, he talks about the axiomatic nature of black feminism, but almost like the godlike trance that they have for white feminists.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what in the peanut butter and jelly is going on here? I mean, literally, because I was like, what in the, like, that doesn't, what? That doesn't make any sense. That claim is that a great example would be, and I kind of know we're kind of dovetailing now, but it's kind of like bell hooks.
Yes. Oh.
bell hooks.
Guess who I found out? I found out about bell hooks through white women.
Thing, I was on the Manosphere podcast, and one of the brothers was like, talking about feminism. I said, well, I don't advocate for feminism. I promote Africana womanism. Shout out to Dr. Cornelia Hudson Williams. And I said, but I've read a lot of feminist literature. One of the guys in the comments said, you read feminist literature? I said, well, yes, I do. One, I had to because it was, part of my PhD program. Yeah. I said, but the second issue is, if I'm going to have a critique or disagreement, I want it to be an informed critique or disagreement. And so I'm able to highlight all of the claims that these scholars are making that are ahistorical and averse to facts. One that Bell Hooks made, she stated that black women had higher social, political, and economic status during colonialism rather than under black male rule in Africa. That is completely false.
That's not true. Yeah, not even close.
Yeah, I recall being at a conference. Bell Hooks was the keynote. So typically, at a conference, they had a person come up, they say a little something, they speak, and then it's kind of like a Q&A, right? But you're supposed to really throw softball questions and let the person bloviate. Not a big deal. I'll be there one day. I'll be to do the same thing, right? But one of the things she stated that blew my mind, she stated, well, you know how patriarchal men are in relationships. They want intimacy and companionship. And I said, well, hold on. Everybody in a relationship wants intimacy and companionship, because if you don't have intimacy and companionship, it's not a romantic relationship, it's a platonic relationship. So now intimacy and companionship is something that's problematic? This is what we're talking about here.
Guess what black women, especially black wives, demand from them, especially from their black men? Intimacy and companionship, okay? Yeah, especially sexually, okay?
Yeah. And you better be giving it to me and no one else.
And you better do it right.
And so that's something that Brother Dwayne, who, he's the resident historian on the platform, he always say one of the things that he always took umbrage with the feminists is they make arguments about black men, but these are the same things black women do. Black women want the same thing.
Yes.
Because this is kind of human nature. You want the person to be what? You want the person to be faithful. You want the person to spend a significant amount of time with you. Right? You want them to be respectful. You want them to care for the home and address your basic needs. But when a black man wants it, a heterosexual black man wants it, now all of a sudden oh my gosh, he's a problem.
It's always Jermaine's fault.
It's because he's beating on her. He's beating on her at home, and we need to be. Another example. This isn't just socially, because we kind of finish up the basis of our original conversation.
Yeah, I got to go in about 5 minutes. I got a show to do myself. Yeah.
LaVar Ball. And put your channel in the chat if you could.
Okay.
LaVar Ball. There's a white woman, Christina Beatty, something like that. Not Christina Beatty, but another white woman. She states, well, all his children are well behaved. They all want to play basketball. They must be afraid of him. So this is what happens when a black man says your children are doing well. It's because they're afraid of you. If they aren't doing well, it's because you're ancient father. Right. So you're damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is socially acceptable. Was she counseled? Absolutely not. What's the Jason Whitlock goes in there crying, talking about, I can't believe they treated you this way. This is so wrong. Yeah. This is what we're dealing with on a macro level. I've dealt with that before. I remember there was a time when my children were probably 8 and 6. I had to take them to work with me. And they were extremely well behaved. And the white woman was like, "Man, when I was a kid growing up, we would run all over the place."
Yeah.
I said, well, they don't have a choice.
Black children are different. Yeah.
Yeah, they don't have a choice. You represent me. That's what my parents taught me growing up. You represent me. Make me look bad and see what happens.
Yeah.
So this is what we're dealing with. Great conversation, family. Make sure once again you like, subscribe, share, thumbs up, hit the notification bell. Make sure you hit that super chat. Appreciate you all for tapping in. I'm going to do a show on is polygamy the solution to, of course, black relationship
problem. Boy. Here we go.
Until next time, family, y'all know what to do. Always bet on black. Peace. Before you go, make sure you hit the subscribe and like button. Thank you for supporting the channel. And remember, here at Lumumba Speaks, we always bet on black. Peace.